Hey, Martin.
Hey,
Hey. Okay. I'm
you guys hear me?
just seeing if I can. If you could just say something for just a second.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you
Hey,
hear me?
Martin.
I can hear you. You're very quiet, so I'm going to try to turn up the volume here to make it
Okay.
higher. Okay. Can you say something again for me?
No.
One of you?
Yep. Check it. 1, 2. Hey, Wade, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I
Yeah.
think I'm not too far away from you right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
where are you?
I'm in Bethany.
Oh, you're 20 minutes away from me.
Yeah. Cool. Been great weather.
It is, yeah.
I'm just. Okay. There we go. It was just very quiet here. So can you guys just say something for me? Can you, Martin or Wade? Can you just say something for me? I just want to test the audio again.
Check, check,
Yeah.
check. Can you
How's it
hear us?
going?
Okay,
hear me?
both of you are still really quiet. I'm going to try to get the audio up here.
All right. Thank you.
Got it all plugged in correctly?
Okay. Hang on one
Microphone's
second.
on.
Okay, just give me 2 more seconds. I'm just trying to get
Is
the.
that green, the left green light on the panel on for the microphones to work?
Yeah, yeah. So the microphone is higher. Let's just get these. Okay. Okay, let's see. Well, this is really loud, but let me go here. I'm going to make the audio here. Yeah. And then go where more show. I'm going to do one other thing. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, can you try one more time, guys? Oh. Now the. Okay. I don't know why. Okay, give me 1 second here.
So I was up in, we moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, and driving back on Sunday, and all I saw was the head. It said bridge collapse on 95, and I went, where? It wasn't back there that far. No.
Okay.
He hung up on us.
Yeah, oh no, I'm still here. I could hear you better that time. So I fixed the audio. It's now just the camera cut out.
Well, I think hanging up on the town manager, that's some kind of violation. He should
That's right.
stand-
We'll
He should
work
stand in the
something
corner for 20 minutes.
Okay. Hey,
So what do we do? If we hang out, we get back in, or do we have to dial back in?
out. Now, he's still connected to us.
Yeah, I'm
Just
still-
he lost his audio visual. He's trying to do something because he lost sound, so.
So-
Plug this for a minute.
Wade
Give
and
him
Wade
a
and
minute here.
Wade and
I'll be
Martin.
glad when they get this, when they finally get our AV system all set up. I'm sure you'll be happy.
And
with
the,
this
gu-
one
and the
of
guy
all.
just emailed me today and said, now we're looking at August. There's one
They
more
can't
piece that
hear
has to
me, I
come in,
guess.
Which is what he said the other day. So August.
Well, we're
is-
close.
I know, it's been a year and 3 months, 4 months. To get all the
Good things
parts
coming
in.
down the pike. We got Titus coming in. We got audio video
Yeah.
coming in. You know, even
Wade?
in August, that's still.
Yeah,
Wade?
we've been meeting with the streetscape and the state and the federal people today, trying to figure out how it's all gonna work.
Are we going to get our money any sooner than we had hoped?
The money's gonna be there. We have to expend the money, and no, it won't. The money's not the problem.
The
it's
bidding process takes a while.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
process is the problem. get into it, okay. Okay, thank you. Bye.
What do we need to do?
Just hang tight, I guess.
Okay. Don't say any bad things about Niles, right? Maybe I can get this. My light's terrible here.
It looks all right.
About,
I mean, it looks like you're,
about the best I can do. Yeah. I'm kind of crammed in a corner here in a condo in this, you know.
so you guys hitting the beach and doing all that good stuff.
Yep. Yep. Went to Funland today.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's a beautiful part of the country here.
It is. Except when all the tourists come.
I hate those. So Niles is apparently working on it, so we should be good to go here soon.
Okay. Hey. We're gonna improvise here.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, I don't have I'm kind of fighting a cold. I don't have a lot to add, so I just want to give my report and just hear what's going on and be able to give a report back to the commissioners. So
Yep.
whatever we can do is good.
I can hear you, Niles. Okay. Right. I might just pull that up.
Niles,
Okay.
can you guys see, can you see us? Okay. Okay. Okay, good deal.
They can see us up on the screen. I got the YouTube up.
Cool.
All right, we ready?
We're ready.
Good evening.
All
Call to
right.
order the June 14th, 2023 Poolsville Planning Commission meeting. On the agenda tonight, we do have approval of minutes. We have Sustainable Poolsville here with comprehensive plan revisions. We have Wallace Montgomery here to work with us on the comprehensive plan itself, the Bricken property preliminary plan, and Donigan property preliminary plan as well. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of the May 10th meeting? Any questions, comments, or edits?
I move we approve the minutes of the May 10th meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. That an aye, Martin? Maybe you can't hear us. Did you hear that, Martin? Did you vote to approve?
Martin?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. They're asking if you want to approve the minutes. If you vote to approve the minutes.
Yes, I vote to approve the minutes.
Okay.
All right.
Just so you know, Niles, I can't hear anybody but you.
That's what I realized now. So let me work on that while we're
Okay.
doing that. So
Okay, it's fine, as long as you prompt me when I need to speak, that's okay with me.
I'll make sure. Okay.
And I'd like to honor a request from Mr. Jameson to have them go first with the Bricken property preliminary plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I know, but they had asked, and so I told Brian, and so we're there.
Full copy
Okay.
out. The hard
It's
copy.
not my call. I just want to.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, what I would like to do is review the comments from Mr. Strong.
Actually, yes, I was just reminded by hand motion that I was supposed to ask Mr. Strong for his comments before we talk to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, there we go. So, back in March 12th, if you have that memo that I sent out, we went over the preliminary plan that was submitted. A couple of comments, and I'm gonna run just down the comments that we made. One is adjust all forest conservation easements to 35 feet in width. Forest conservation areas and stormwater water discharge should not be considered as part of the open space. They cannot be used for recreation or development of a recreation facility. Roadway sections should be per the town standards. Poolsville, the primary residential right-of-way section is 70 feet, and that was attached to that memo. Storm drainage lines locations that run between two lots should be centered over those two lot lines. In other words, should be bent so that they fall over the center line, so that both those lots are encumbered. Easements will be dedicated to the town for stormwater lines, minimum of 20 feet for future maintenance reasons, and the bioswale maintenance easements will need to be dedicated to Montgomery County. We did this over at Westerly Grove. Sewer system is shown as a pressure sewer system. Developer should show that gravity system is not practical. The sewage pump station should be located closer to the West Willard and shown on the west as on West Bodmer Avenue. We talked about that. It is noted the sewer pump station is connected to a pressure sewer line on Westerly Grove, in Westerly Grove. And that's a high pressure system. That's a low pressure system, and the pump station would be a high pressure system, so we'd have to adjust that. All sewer and water mains should be located in proposed right-of-ways or on property owned by the town of Poolsville. At the time, it showed the sewer easement running behind the property, as you can see, along West Willard. We want to pull those out of there. Water line runs along West Willard Road is not continuous. We recommend test pitting to confirm location and size of the water line. Water and sewer in the category, county category plan is W6 and S6. That'll have to be addressed by the developer. Areas there is no planned community service That's what W6 means. There's no planned community service within that time period, so they'll have to go for an adjustment there. Location of water valves need to be shown on the plans. Covenants and restrictions are not addressed. Road naming needs to be addressed by Parks and Streets. Montgomery County Schools and Fire Service needs to have comments on the plans. Adequate water and sewer allocation still needs to be addressed. A traffic study has been submitted and was reviewed, and it was fine. We recommend a public infrastructure agreement be in place prior to signature of preliminary plans. That's the full set of plans. It should be also noted the comprehensive plan is being developed at the present time, and this may impact the development process. Stormwater concept has been approved by Montgomery County. Some of these things we've discussed with the developer already verbally, and we haven't received a response to some of the outstanding things. They did submit the 6-1. They did submit another plan addressing the forest conservation and also the recreation area. And that's the plan that is before you at the present time. We did receive a forest conservation plan after the first. I did not have time to review that forest conservation plan yet. Any questions?
Hang on. All right, Martin or Wade, did you have any questions for John on his memo?
I do not know.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
You said we recommended a PIA in place prior to the signature of any preliminary plan.
The preliminary plan set.
Yeah, what,
Not at this time, no.
not this time, right? Yeah. I don't have any questions. What, do you have, you're not concerned about the items you haven't heard about yet? You said you've gotten some response on some, you're still waiting.
No, we've talked about it.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. We've discussed it a few times with John Chacon from the water and sewer side of things. Mr. Jameson also indicated that he was aware of having to move the sewer line that runs in back of those lots, moving it and shifting it around so that it's not in the back of the lots.
We discussed that at the last meeting, to relocate those sewer lines at that point. So what I had anticipated tonight was go over what John had prepared on the 12th of March, and also to review what we discussed on the 11th of May. So I'm going to start with the 11th of May, because you have the most recent plan that was submitted at the 1st of June. We have enlarged the available park space on parcel B to 1.07 acres. We have moved the afforestation on parcel B to parcel A.
I do not.
What do you say?
I do not.
Hold on one second.
You know,
Martin? Did you say something there? I just heard so.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Hang on one second.
Okay. Moving along here. We have not moved the pump station on parcel A closer to the intersection of Bodmer and West Willard. I'm trying to find what the depth is going to be for that invert going into that pump station. And maybe Wade or John could answer this. I recall that the depth, maximum depth for an invert to a pump station should be about 15 feet. Is that correct? Or 20 feet?
We wouldn't want to see it any deeper than 20 feet.
Okay, all right. Move the lot lines on lot 29 to place a storm drain on parcel C. We've done that. Relocate the driveway on lot 37 to avoid having the driveways of lot 37, 36, and 35 all right next to each other. We did that in the submission. On what Mr. Strong just went over in March, I think the first bulleted items we have all addressed. Reduce the number of driveways, eliminate pipe stems, provide park area, playground, identify trail system, and tie into the Westerly Grove subdivision. At our last conversation that we had, we also addressed having the trail go down to Stony Spring and go across Westerly Road into the Stony Spring subdivision. As to the preliminary plan, I think John hit everything down to number 6, storm drainage. Mr. Shianko, we have been in touch with about items 6 through 10. I did talk to him about the water line to show that correctly on the plan, because we picked up on that very quickly with him. So the category, water and sewer, item number 12, water and sewer category plan, we have submitted to Montgomery County and to WSSC. They will have a meeting sometime this month. We are one of 6 requests for category changes. This is not an issue with WSSC because it's in the town of Poolesville. Town of Poolesville has its own water and sewer, but this is something that I have to do to get the preliminary plan approval from you. When I will get that, I hope either by the end of the month or sometime this summer. Historically, they will get on a skeleton schedule in August. So we'll have something hopefully by the end of summer, if not sooner. Number 13, that's John Shianko, also location of water valves need to be shown on the plans. Working on that. I'm not sure about 14, covenants and restrictions not shown. I need a little better definition about that. I thought the PIA would cover those type of restrictions, but I need a little education here.
Correct. It may show in the PIA, but also if there may not be any covenants and there may not be any restrictions, but
Okay.
we don't have,
All right.
you know.
We, at this point in time, have no desire to put restrictive covenants on the property. If and when we sell the property to a builder, if they want to come back and put restrictions and covenants on, they will revisit you at that time. As for us, we, on our other projects here and other developments in the county and Frederick County, we've never put covenants on. So we've left that to the final developer. Road naming, we did go in front of the parks. We had this discussion last meeting in May. There was one name that we added on of Mrs. Ruth Fisher, and that we'd like to keep it, but
Just to comment on that part, we are reviewing some of the stuff related to the naming of roads and such, so the Parks Board hasn't officially yet given their recommendation on that yet, as they're going through a whole process with the policy.
That's fine.
But the information we received, which we talked about last time, is part of that process.
and that's right. Montgomery County Schools and Montgomery County Fire Services, we're going to reach out to them. We were somewhat holding back a little bit doing that, but we will. Josh and I talked about that today, and get the comments from the Board of Education and the Montgomery County Fire. And that, we're going to start that this week, right? Yeah, we
Yes, sir.
talked about it today, getting that out. Adequate water and sewer allocation needs to be addressed. Traffic study has been submitted and is under review. My understanding is that we're fine with that?
That is correct.
Okay. PIA agreement. I mean, we're ready to work on that at any time, but we may be premature right now, don't you think? Yeah.
I would think that you need to get
We
through
gotta-
these
we
other
gotta go
hoops
down the
first.
road A little bit more here. yeah.
Right.
All right. Item number 20, that's, no comment. Item 21, stormwater concept has been approved by Montgomery County, and you're in receipt of that. So I don't know what else. The reason I kind of wanted to go first is that I don't have a whole lot more to go over unless you all do. As long as we're all on the same understanding of what the marching orders are that we got from John Strong in March and what we've addressed so far from our latest meeting in May, I don't want to waste any more of your time, and hopefully you don't want to waste any more of mine. But I think we're all on the same marching orders here of what has to be done to get this moving forward to preliminary plan approval.
So, just, go ahead.
We don't want to waste any more of the
Yeah.
board's time until we have all this stuff squared away.
Uh.
I don't know what's going on, how we schedule stuff, but we'd like to not be scheduled at least for next month so that we can not waste people's time because they have lives themselves and keep moving forward with what we know our marching orders are.
Certainly. I think the only other thing to just discuss, there's 2 points, and I think we're all in agreement sort of in where we're at. Just to go back from what the specific, the board requests that were in the letter that I sent you and that were addressed, where it was about the park and everything. Remember, we discussed that last time. And just to sort of, for the benefit of the board and say what we discussed about the available park space and the moving of the forestation and all of that, which we've discussed and is, addressed. And then, of course, there's John's comments that we have to address. Part of it is just to make sure that that was because the commission had asked for these changes and that we'd formally send a letter, this is just so that everybody can understand this is where we are and this is what's been addressed. So if there's anything else, any questions that the commissioners have, once the whole thing comes together, we can come back in August or September, or in that time frame. That I don't think is a problem. But part of this was to make sure that what the feedback that was directly given to the commission was addressed, and so that if they had further questions, they could address that.
You guys ask it and we pretty much do it.
Well, I don't know about that. Within reason here.
Wade, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No. I think we're on board. Yeah, it's move forward. There's several things to be addressed, and then once they're addressed, they can come back.
Any other concerns or anything you want to discuss before they leave?
Thank you guys for your
Yeah.
time.
Chuck, you good?
However, as we do get some of this information that we receive, I will forward it to you all so that it can be disseminated to you for your review. I don't know if I need to run back every time I get something from Montgomery County or WSSC, but we will supply that to Niles and John and keep it moving forward in that light.
I think, unless there's a disagreement, any question or concern from anyone, but I think, yes, once we get all of it addressed, that can be when you come back, but if you want to send us as things get updated, we can look at it from a staff's perspective and see if there's something else that needs to be addressed.
Well,
Yes,
some
sir.
of these things I'm talking about are administrative, such
Yes,
as the
yeah,
water
and-
and sewer category change, that's more of administrative.
Correct.
What I get back from the Board of Education and the fire department,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more administrative than anything else.
Yeah,
All right?
So let me jump in for 1 minute.
yeah,
I think that adequate facilities, and we're talking with what's going on with the water and the PFAS and the new EPA regulations that has come down, the wells have been offline. There could be a certain chance that if we look at this adequate facilities, that this may have to sit on a shelf and be contingent and conditioned upon other things, state agencies or Montgomery County Stormwater, but water allocation is going to be a big one that as we're wrestling, what we're going through right now with our water system. So I just wanted to put that out there in front right now.
Not to waste anybody's time, are you looking at bringing online any of the other wells that you have available?
So it's, it's well 414 are still under construction. They should have been online as Westerly Grove was being developed, but certain circumstances happened at that point, so they don't have transformers and parts for it yet. We have well 2 and 3 off the line right now, and EPA regulations just came through, and there may be a couple other wells that are impacted. And so at this moment in time, it's not looking very hopeful.
Well, in all fairness to myself and you, I think we are under the understanding that there would be some type of contingency on the availability of water and sewer, and the PFAS is part
Absolutely.
of
I just
that.
wanted to be upfront and honest.
Yeah.
and just
Can't do
as
anything
a
for you, so.
just as a future thing, just to mention, since Wade and I talked about this before, as has been out there, we have been doing work regarding PFAS remediation and things like that. So there'll be an update for that topic for the commission at a future meeting. So just to let you know where we are on that, will be more thorough update at a future meeting.
Anything else?
I'd just like to add, thank you for making that park a little bit bigger. I see you worked that out, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We also provided the screening you guys requested on that, I'm sorry, I can't remember the gentleman's name. But
Mr. Pierce.
Mr. Pierce, yeah, we provided, nobody talked about that. We filled in with reforestation, afforestation, so Mr. Pierce won't be able to see into the subdivision. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me go ahead.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate that very
Yep.
much.
You're welcome. All right, we'll do Sustainable Poolsville, report on the comprehensive plan revisions.
Good evening.
Good evening.
everyone.
Can you turn your mic on?
Danny Embry, Vice Chair, Sustainable Poolsville. And Marcus Rauschecker, member of Sustainable Poolsville. So, I guess, purpose of tonight is just kind of hopefully finalize the suggestions we've made. We provided them to Niles. I know there's one edit with the date with when we originally got the certification. But we're hoping everything else looks good. So we're excited to hear feedback, thoughts.
I was just gonna ask for some feedback and thoughts.
Or does it just look good? Because we're fine with that.
Are we still looking at creating a separate section for sustainability and splitting it out from the natural resources section? Then I'm good.
Yeah, we were proposing that we just rebrand that section.
No, it's,
Okay, so we'll have
Separate.
it separate.
you
That's
can't,
fine.
you can't really rebrand that.
Yeah.
The sustainable section.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I feel like there's not enough here for its own section, though. I don't know, like, it doesn't feel like it's like enough to me. Like, looking at our other sections that are, 14, 15 pages of information, this is just, it feels like it fits into something very nicely, and those paragraphs should be emphasized in there, but I don't know if it needs its own section.
One thing just to suggest is that if you look at in the environmental resources chapter that Wallace Montgomery built, there are sections relating to this, and it might just simply be a matter of pulling those out and adding these as the front to it, and then making two sections that way, because that's something that Michael and I discussed as a potential, if we decide to do two different sections, that could be a potential way, because there's stuff, for example, the recommendations that Sustainable Poolsville had originally come to us with are in that section, and obviously that we could tweak those just based on feedback and things like that. But that's an example of something that could be, we could look at that chapter and see if there's other things to be pulled out, and that might be part of it.
A little more bulk, I guess, more meat.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like there's, like, two paragraphs on why sustainability is important, which it is, and there's nobody here who doesn't think that. But I just don't know if it's its own chapter in my mind when I look at that.
Well, the same way Montgomery Wallace kind of created the what is it called? The natural, environmental resources in sensitive areas. I mean, we're providing the basis, of what we could go off of. And as Niall suggested, we could work with them and further develop the section.
Right. I mean, I think in terms of what we are proposing here, the goals, the list of goals is actually just taken from what was in the draft plan already. And we assume there would be some more development, in conjunction with our support here on that language. But we just wanted to, make sure that we agree with the work that's been done already, and we want to, support that.
Yeah, I think what we can agree on is the content, right? And we are looking at now having a sustainability chapter, and we'll work with Wallace Montgomery and see how that evolves, and if something changes, certainly you guys will see something that we decide to change, or how it evolves, you guys will be part of the process. But I think what we can agree on tonight, which is really the most important thing, is that the content is good.
Yeah, I love the work that you've done. I super appreciate all of your hard work. This is quite nice and important, and I think that it should be integrated into our comprehensive plan. I think I align with Amanda that this is not substance enough to merit its own chapter. It is definitely a section, though, that should be highlighted. And looking at the environmental resource chapter right now, I see that we do have, at the end of the chapter, a section that talks about sustainable Maryland, and I'm wondering if we could reposition in such a way that we move sustainable Maryland towards the beginning of the chapter and sustainable Poolsville as a follow-up to that, to just build upon sort of this idea before we move into the climate change sections and all of that. I think that makes a reasonable flow in my mind from one thing to another, but that's my only comment.
Yeah, I'm just worried that if it's separate, it's going to be the same things twice, almost. And it's just going to be redundant and confusing as to what the differences are. Whereas if it's integrated and more linear, like you're talking about, it just flows better and makes sense. The goals are the same.
Why not rebrand it sustainability? And then, are we agreeing that, or we're saying, it sounds like
No.
Chuck wants it two separate. What's the pushback on that idea?
Because I believe you have to have a section on environmental resources in sensitive areas, including inventory by law.
Yeah, it is a requirement. It's a state requirement.
Okay, so and part of that state requirement is that it's actually titled as such.
It would be very challenging, I believe, for people to view it if it's not.
Right, that's what they're expecting.
Okay.
Regardless, the content can be addressed once we decide what we're going to do with the two various sections. I don't think we need to do that right now.
Yeah, I'd like to work with Wallace a little bit more and see what it might look like if we pulled some of the stuff out of the sustainability chapter and brought it in, I'm sorry, in the environmental resources and brought it into sustainability. And I think also that even if it's a smaller, its own smaller chapter now, that it's gonna grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of
1,000%.
even if it's not for this comprehensive plan, super stout, I think it's signaling that we're giving it a foothold for the future, so. But we can discuss it.
And the bullet pointed goals and objectives, while they're not robust in language, I think they lay out the vision of what our town intends to achieve as it grows. And I think it would be a misstep to not have a standalone sustainability section. I think the fact that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Montgomery Wallace created all the language within the environmental resources and sensitive areas section because of what Chuck's saying, because it's a required section of any comprehensive plan. So I think working with Mike, we can further develop the sustainable section and you know, like you're saying, to avoid overlap, but then have the two sections exist. And you know, to your point, by doing that, we welcome and we allow this to be the grand entrance into the plan with this standalone sustainable section that directly acknowledges what Sustainable Poolsville is, you know, what its mission is, etc. And then as time goes, it will become more robust. I guarantee you this, every section that's in there now, this isn't the time that they came to be. They're robust because they've been around for decades and they've been developed over that period of time. To say we're not going to have a sustainable section because it's not 20 pages long, I think doesn't serve our town well. And I think our town obviously wants to stand behind this mission of sustainability because we have a sign right there. So let's not miss this opportunity because another one doesn't come along for a little while. And to bake it into one section, standing alone and having a section title is that's to me aligning with what our town is saying it is. We have this committee, we meet monthly, you know, we're a group of eager volunteers just like you all. And you know, if we need to further develop it, I think working with Wallace Montgomery and then allowing us to kind of weigh in, like giving our edits, like we did with the bullet points that Marcus and I were able to see, you know, the night that was presented, which was great because that section had not been presented prior to that meeting. And I hope that we had an influence on how it started to develop.
Sure.
So that's kind of my thinking. I just, you know, I kind of am reading what people are saying and I get your points, but also I just can't say, like, to me, it's really, really important that it is its own standalone section because I hope a decade from now, it is 20 pages. But without it becoming its own section, that can't happen.
Yep. I think your points are very valid and clear, and I think we'll take them under consideration and we'll do what comes up to be best. So I appreciate your enthusiasm for this, Danny, I really do. But no questions, comments about the content?
So my only comment is that if this is going to be a true standalone chapter and to be something significant, it cannot just be an introduction and a goals. I want to see philosophy. I want to see government backup. I want to see guiding principles. I want to see infrastructure. I want to see areas of vulnerability. I want to see how this actually perpetuates, because this is beautiful and I really like this, but this is a goal without any legs. And unless you're going to provide legs to the chapter, it doesn't work in my mind.
The other thing is if these are the goals from the natural resources chapter that you guys took and rewrote, they're in the natural resources chapter. That's where my issue is that the goals are in two places.
Sure.
And that doesn't make sense. So they need to be standalone goals as well. We can't say the goals twice.
I love that, and to me, it sounds like what you guys are saying is exactly what we want to have happen. Working with Wallace Montgomery, I'm confident we can get there. Am I wrong, Mike? I mean, I'm confident we can develop this section, and it sounds like we're all eager to do it, right? I mean, we're all agreeing that it would be a good thing, correct? So that's great.
It's not, this isn't a section, right, this isn't a chapter yet, and I get that point, it's not, but I don't know that that means that it can't be, and then it won't be. I think that's something for us to work on, and we can come back to you through email or anything else and say, hey, expand on this, give us some more on this, right? But I think you're giving us something to work with, and I think that's pretty much where we are right now. We just say, yeah, we like this, and we'll see how we can make it work going forward. We all have kind of represented the same philosophy about it. It would be great if it was his own chapter, and I think we all agree that right now it's not, but,
I think that's the thing I wanted us to discuss, though, is does this need to be its own chapter? Because do we want to allocate resources in Wallace Montgomery's time? And it sounds like that's a yes if it's beefed up and it's those things that Lexi talked about. If not, then yes, I want it part of the environmental resources chapter. So I think that that's a discussion, and that was kind of what I was getting at, is right now, this is not standalone.
Yep.
But if we are looking for Wallace Montgomery to allocate time and resources to making this a chapter, then that's fine with me, and I think that it is important. I'm not saying it's not at all, but this is not enough yet.
And I don't think it was intended to be the final version. It's just, this is kind of demonstrating the vision of what we would recommend, at least the starting point of it. And then if this committee or this commission, is approving, then we could continue working on it to develop it further, to make it into what you would like to see it to be.
100%. And, the same way that you all had them write any section that currently exists, I think the fact that we exist, Sustainable Poolsville, that we proudly have a banner in our town hall, I think answers the question. Yeah, we should devote the resources to developing this section. That to me would be a significant misstep to not do that. And maybe that's not the town's feeling. And I think if that's not, then that maybe shouldn't be hanging up there and we shouldn't exist, because, we should exist and be met with having a section that's saying, yeah, this is our guiding document. This is how our town's gonna develop for the next maybe decade. And we exist as a committee. So it doesn't really make sense to me, the idea that the town doesn't think resources should go towards developing such a section. So that's kind of my.
And just to add on that, I think if Poolsville wants to represent itself as being, forward-thinking and, on the cusp of what's coming, which is definitely this. We're seeing more and more sustainability sections in comprehensive plans. And I think as more and more comprehensive plans are written, you're going to see more and more standalone sustainability sections. And so, this is an opportunity for Poolsville to be ahead of the curve here. And if we are going to have a standalone section, I think that will reflect well on the town and its forward-thinking vision, because we're going to see more and more of this. This is the trend that we're seeing.
And our position in the midst of the ag reserve should give us every reason to lead from the ag with such a section, because this will eventually become state law. especially in a state like Maryland, that this section's in a comprehensive plan. So let's be ahead of the curve, like Marcus is suggesting. Let's do it because this is what we believe. Because we have a committee and we proudly have a banner in our town hall saying that we are a sustainable community and that it's not just like a marketing thing for prospective home buyers that our town's sustainable, but we're taking action. We're putting it in our guiding document and we're developing a section. You know, I think that's really important. And, you know, so.
Hey, Brian, can I step in for a minute?
Please.
Okay, yes, so, as staff is taking the lead on developing these chapters, working directly with Wallace Montgomery, we've heard everybody's side on this, and loud and clear. And let staff kind of put some stuff together and some suggestions and bring it back to the board.
Appreciate that idea, Wade. I think it's fantastic.
Sounds great to me.
Sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
Everyone. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you guys for your time
Thank you.
and everything you do. Wallace Montgomery. I thought that was a good segue, that's why I had them go first.
There we go.
Yeah.
Y'all, good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And actually, I will go ahead and segue into that because that was one of the, I guess, 4 items that I wanted to go through this evening with you all, and glad to be back. Because we have been having conversations with staff, Niles and Wade, as well as directly with the Sustainable Poolsville Group for actually several months. And so my take is similar. Someone who's working on writing a lot of this plan to yours is that I was expecting a little bit more content from them, maybe a little bit more direction. Because I agree, at this point, it's probably not enough for a standalone chapter. But if staff wants to work with us, if we get some direction from Niles or Wade to work directly with Danny or take even from some of their other documents, more material, we could certainly create another chapter. It's really up to you in terms of what you all want to do. I would say, either there's no reason not to, if there's enough content to have its own chapter. It doesn't need to be. It could certainly be included in that other one, and possibly also, I think the idea that you're raising as one option would be possibly to elevate it in the chapter itself.
I think the final, but I really think that I would like to see, and maybe if we want to just take a straw poll to see, but I would like to see the town work, the staff to work, to see what a sustainability chapter might look like.
Yeah.
And if what we're coming up with we don't like, then we figure out another way to incorporate this content.
So Michael and I and Wade and I have had sort of discussions sort of generally about what can we move or what can be divided into sections and what can be discussed in that format, maybe what needs to be expanded. And so we can sort of go from there. So I think that's a good approach.
Yep.
And we'll make sure that happens.
Okay, so and I think,
I want to make sure, we had 2 people that have a little bit of opposition. I just want to make sure they're comfortable with this approach before we move on.
I don't feel like I have opposition, except that I think that they gave us the same goals that are in another chapter, and that, to me, doesn't make sense. So if you're gonna make another chapter, there needs to be goals that are for that chapter. You can't have the same goals twice, or it should be one section. So if that's something that town staff can work on and help delineate, I am completely fine with having a separate sustainability chapter. But what we have here is 2 paragraphs that should go in natural resources, because we already have those goals.
And there are specific things, just looking at it, we did recently did the resolution to be energy independent and things like that, or energy independent, renewable energy by 2030 and such. And that's not specifically, like it's referred to it, but it's not specifically called out. So there's specific things we can look at like that, so.
I have no opposition to having town staff continue down this road. I am skeptical, given what we have in front of us, that it will yield enough to be its own chapter. And with that being said, I don't know that you make a chapter as a placeholder for the future. You umbrella it under something else until it has legs to walk on by itself. You don't, until it can stand on its own, you don't leave it out there in the wind to hang and just be there. That's my personal thought.
And one other thing, if town staff is working on this and trying to get an idea of how much we can put in, I'm fine with that. I don't want to use Wallace Montgomery and resources and town money that we're spending on somehow crafting something to go in this chapter. It just seems like this could be kind of a lot based on what we have right now of time and energy.
Well, that fits in with what we had in our last discussion. I mean, frankly, there's a lot of things that Wallace Montgomery flat out cannot write. They do not have the background knowledge or skill set to write, and town staff, as well as some of us, will be doing a lot more of that writing. I would like to see the folks who are just here doing more of that writing, so that's something we want to send back to them after town staff has a better look at it, but, and that's also one of the reasons why I like splitting out into their own chapter for ownership and responsibility purposes as well.
Does Martin have any comments?
No, I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, so we'll coordinate moving forward as we have been on the other chapters and working with that. So, and that kind of also segues into, I guess, the next point. So just to summarize at the beginning, since we're not doing a PowerPoint this time. So I will talk a little bit, kind of updating on this, where we are with the chapters and the schedule based on the conversations we've been having with staff, as well, and the input that was shared with us from your last workshop. And then we're going to talk through the draft municipal growth element that I believe that Wade and Chuck worked on, that was shared with us. And then I think also that Niles sent out again the transportation element, and so we'll spend a little bit of time at the end there, kind of going over that again. But just, I guess, to start with an overview. So, as you know, we've been, over the last few meetings with you, kind of going over the schedule in addition to coming up with the discussion about the specific items. And so it's been at top of mind for us in working with you to figure out what the schedule is and kind of expedite the completion of the plan process, so that we can get all of your input, finalize the document, and get it into a public review kind of state. And so I've shared those iterations with you. We had a meeting last week with, in person actually. We came down here, Ray Moravec and I, to meet with Wade and Niles after your last workshop, and then I've been working on the schedule as well. So I think what we shared with you is still generally what we've been trying to do, which is try to finalize the plan by the end of the year. So as we've talked about previously, at the end of the process, regardless of how much time we spend with it, it still takes a number of months to get through the review process with the public hearing, the 60-day review with the state agencies, other public comments, et cetera, the town commissioners. So that is a little bit of a boilerplate process. It takes 3-4 months regardless. And so I've been, the last several months, actually trying to say, well, let's try to finalize this by the end of the year. So that means we really need to get into that by September or so. And so based on our conversations, we're still shooting for that. Now, we may want to spend, we also want to make sure once we have the draft plan that you all have time to talk about it, review it, give our comments, discuss amongst yourselves, because that's, even once we've gone over this another time, you just need that time. So we're probably looking at the August, September timeframe to do that. So that means we're really shooting to get you the draft plan by the August meeting. Now, as I've talked about at the last few meetings, where we've been a little bit, not quite stuck, but just where we are in the process, has been to try to resolve the land use, get the land use maps in place, because that gives us the opportunity to quantify for the municipal growth calculations, which we're talking about tonight, and also the water resource element. So actually this morning, we already have a draft of the, initial draft of the water resource element, which we're not bringing to you yet. There were some data gaps that we had and have, and we actually met with John and Wade this morning. They've sent us some data, so we'll be able to bring that back to you next month in a draft form. And then also, this growth element. So we're pretty much there, and I appreciate the work that was put into kind of outlining this municipal growth element. So all of that speaks to the fact that this is kind of a no-growth plan. So we'll get into that in a minute. So as we go through the next few meetings, we'll be taking these elements over to you, including the economic development element that we talked about. I think you all didn't have time in June for another workshop, so our next meeting will be, at least based on that conversation we had in April, we tried to look for dates. We can obviously schedule something, we'll probably need to schedule another meeting workshop format at some point. But right now, we're looking to come back in July next time for your regular meeting, and I think we did set up a couple months ago another meeting in July, and then the August meeting. So again, if there's a need for another meeting in there somewhere, we can figure that out. But that's our general timeframe. We'll be bringing those elements to you to review. And then also, what we've talked about with staff is going back again to the initial set of chapters which we've always shared with you, taking their edits, the edits that you've provided, the ones that Niles is consolidating, and basically work with staff to finalize or amend, everything's kind of a draft until it's not, right? But show the changes and add other text that has come out of the other element discussions that overlap, et cetera. So that kind of on a parallel track, we'll be working with staff to get those out and then have you all see them as we get to the August date. So kind of parallel tracks here, most of the time in the meeting discussing the new information, but then working in parallel with that to get those things. So the goal really is to kind of get everything done by August, which is what we've been working toward for the last couple months. And I think we made pretty good progress, so appreciate that. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about that. We did, with staff, get the input from your last workshop that I did not attend, so I appreciate that as well.
So just to sort of tack on that, what we talked about we talked a little bit about Chuck's outline last time in the work session, but I know not all of you had a chance to really see it at that point. So we wanted to make sure that if there's any changes or anything that we need to do, based on this, we can incorporate that into the chapter and so forth.
I feel like the outline that you provided, Chuck, is really nice. It seems to have all of the necessary parts.
It's a combination. I'm sorry.
Since the fires last week.
Yeah, it's a combination of, from the old master plan, the hierarchy, the current draft, and a few other areas. One thing I was thinking about when I was drafting up this annotated outline, that introduction section, that pretty much does the introduction chapter there, that does the kind of the history of what's happened in the last 12-ish years. The more I think about that, and I was thinking about when I was drafting that up, and it needs a little input and polishing from Wade and staff too, because there are some development names in there that I know I just kind of place order, I can't remember what it's really called. We call it the whatever property, but that's not the real name. But that little half-page section, I feel like that should actually work its way out of here and up into the main intro chapter for the document, because it's relevant in a lot of different areas, and maybe just have a boiled down 2 or 3 sentencer that kind of aggregates it down just for the municipal growth element chapter, and kind of points back to the what do we have in the main intro.
Yeah, and I appreciate that as well, because I think one of the things that we talked about, and I've mentioned this a couple times, I mean, typically, I started this somewhat into the process, and typically we start with the land use and the growth elements, because that way, that becomes kind of the overarching theme, and I know we talked about themes at the April workshop. Really, it's a no-growth plan because there's just not a lot of capacity for growth. And without some additional infrastructure investment, significant infrastructure investment, you're really not going to be able to accommodate growth, which simplifies things because we're not then talking about changing the priority funding area boundaries. We're not talking about annexation of additional parcels, et cetera, identifying that, looking at, and, you know, if you were to want to do that, we would have to do a couple different scenarios depending on the range of density you might be seeing, et cetera. So by eliminating that, really we're kind of stating from the policy standpoint that that's not really a desired outcome. So we can then write from that standpoint, and again, the kind of the history of how we've gotten to that point is what the plan describes. And again, I do appreciate the work that Chuck and Wade put in putting this together. And what we'll do is incorporate this outline with the other kind of data elements that are included in the growth chapter. And Niles has already sent us some of the, and I think, you know, in your packet, you can see that in our development capacity analysis, there's very few unencumbered parcels that have really any capacity whatsoever.
Yeah, and I just want to tag on to that. This map that I provided for you all is just sort of what it would be, those parcels, based just on land use and that kind of thing. There's other constraints on some of the properties that are related to like water and sewer and other things that will be revised on this, just something within the last couple of days that we were discussing. So, but this is just the idea of generally there's only so many properties left within the town that could even be developed under the conditions that we have in town at the moment, so.
And that table, I just identifies the ones that are sort of, they don't have an active plan for, so the ones that are already in the pipeline are already removed.
And,
I just want to clarify what you said, Chuck, and maybe amplify that if I'm hearing you correctly, then I completely agree, that within the growth element, we're talking about this no longer being a growth plan. And that since we are moving out of a period of residential growth, that should also be highlighted within our introduction chapter, which it is not, I just happened to go through it.
Sure.
And there is no mention that this plan is not a plan in which growth is severely limited or that it will become zero over the next 10 years as a
Right.
perspective. And so
Right.
I agree with you that growth element is incredibly important. And I agree that should be something that is included as our community is not expanding. You know, I know we have a few things in the pipeline, but overall, that is very minimal. And if I'm hearing you right, am I?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just want to make sure I understand and then amplify that
Yeah,
I agree it
that's
needs
what
to
I
be in chapter 1.
Right. And so that's really, kind of where we left off. And if I actually had attended the last workshop, that was going to be the first question I was going to ask, is to verify that you all are really envisioning this as kind of a no-growth plan because there's not a lot of capacity available on the existing parcels as well as the constraints on the infrastructure. So if we're verifying that, then we're really basically writing the plan based on that. And so we have to, and that's why I haven't spent a lot of time going back yet to the introductory chapters because we do need to add that language in. And the other piece that I wanted to just highlight was something that we did talk about in April as well, which was articulating kind of a redevelopment vision for the town, because if we're not growing, then the change most likely over time is going to be in the redevelopment stage. And we do want to probably articulate a vision for that, like you had the town center vision previously. And so, so we had talked about that already. There's already a Google Doc, and my little reminder was, if anybody has any thoughts or points or content that they wanted, we'll draft that with staff. But if you all want to just take a look at that again, add your thoughts, ideas to it, and then we will draft it up collectively based on really what your vision is, right? We'll take those ideas and put it into a narrative.
I just want to add one more thing with regards to the mapping. I know that we have maps of current use and future use, yet none of the maps are zoning. And I would like to see
Right.
a map on our GIS system that is not what people are doing with the property or what we expect to do with the property, but what it is actually zoned, because
Right.
that is an important thing that is missing. And I kept getting these two confused during one of our meetings, and I think that it would be a mistake not to include that overlay.
Sure.
So we have a separate zoning map that is there. So what we will do is we'll take, yes, yeah, we'll work with Wallace Montgomery on that because we have all of that data and we can.
Actually, that will be probably part. So the town has an agreement to go and do certain GIS functions. We can put that in there as part of their duties.
Right. So the future zoning map is an implementation tool. So if we would show the existing zoning, and as we finalize this, if you actually wanted to propose some changes to that existing zoning, that would be a separate exhibit in the final plan.
Yeah, I honestly think that an accurate current zoning in GIS is critical, but that's to what you're alluding to. That'll actually be, once the comp plan is done, that will be a lot of the implementation execution things, especially for redevelopment, because I think I don't know if we'll be successful at doing some rezoning, but we definitely need to take a crack at that, I think, to make some of the redevelopment ideas we've got floating around viable.
So, Wade, this be a question from you. Legally, can we go ahead and put in a plan of a prospective zoning? I'm not sure how you would do that, because this board may not be the one that sits on that board.
Yeah, I feel like doing that is opening a can of worms that's not worth opening yet. I think it's better to lay out that, like, for example, one of the goals that I threw out here, and I think Wade had alluded to, was one of the first things, whatever comes after this process is when we work on the redevelopment topic, is we have to go back, take a hard look at the code, subdivision regs, zoning, and a few other things. I think our thing, what we should be doing here is staying clear that we must do these things within, quickly after we get the comp plan done.
Yeah.
Doing a draft proposed rezoning is just muddying the waters.
That's usually the next step after the plan is.
And so that, I think, going off that and what John was saying, just to piggyback is, so maybe what we do for the agreement with Wallace Montgomery and all of that is just say, create a current zoning map. And then in the goals as you have it, to reevaluate zoning, and that could be a potential future thing for them to do as part of their agreement as well.
Right, but I appreciate you articulating as much of the narrative in terms of what the goals are for that effort, that we want to specify that as much. So that it's clear as a follow-up item what the goal is, because you're putting that in the plan, right?
I think going a little bit on what Chuck and Lexi have both been saying, that introduction chapter, having something about how really there's not much room for growth, but really emphasizing that we're looking at redevelopment. I think that those both parts really need to be in that introduction, because that is really the theme for a lot of this now, as we're closing down on a lot of,
Yes.
the viable stuff.
No, absolutely.
Sorry, I was just saying that this plan really is a retooling sort of situation, and that I agree with you, that should also be included in that intro chapter.
Especially since it's not if you go out and picked up 5 master plans for towns our size or even a little bit bigger, I bet you all 5 of them would not have this topic, at least not even remotely as front and center. So I think we need to get really right up front, help set the stage. And again, not just for that theme, that flavor flows not just in the community growth section, it'll definitely flow some into not business development, economic development, and a few other chapters in different flavors, I think.
Calling that out specifically very early and strongly in the introduction feeds right into the themes that we've been talking about, right? We're looking at redevelopment and we're looking at sustainability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So as we talk about these things, and we did touch on this in April when we talked about, themes, I think you suggested it, was if there are other themes that you want us to identify and write in a little bit more, and we can think about this too based on it. I think number one, first and foremost, is really the growth constraints. And it is a little unusual in Maryland, right? Because here, especially with the PFA law, you know, we need to go through the step of evaluating the growth and then decide where it goes, right? And most other cases, there's at least some growth that's going somewhere, right? And so then the process of the plan is to identify those areas. So the fact that we don't have any other areas really makes it unusual in that way. But we do need to make that point, and at least for this next period of time, you know, the situation may be different 10 or 20 years from now, right, in terms of what needs to happen, right, and what happens in the intervening time. But at least at this point, that's what your vision is. So we need to be specific about that. And that is unusual, I would say. So we'll take.
Say that, and you can without actually saying it, right? We just focus on some of these other things that we about the growth, but we just can actually say.
Right. Right.
What I think we can also do, just connecting this, is looking back at the introduction and looking at some of the other elements of it as one of the things that we do when we're redrafting that. So Wade and I can take a look at that as we go through, so that the key themes from each chapter can be incorporated in that introduction, but have that as being one of the main ones.
Yeah, so we'll work with staff and coordinate with them on that, and that's what we've been talking about offline with them, kind of trying to figure out how to get this plan finished and drafted with you. But the key, I mean, that's why this is so important, these elements, right? Because that's really setting the frame for the rest of it, and a lot of the other pieces are just supporting that based on where the town is and where you're wanting to go, and needing to go, really, in this case. So I don't know if there's any other comments or questions based on the outline that was shared, but like I said, we'll build out the chapter based on this outline, and we'll be bringing that back to you next month. And then incorporating the data elements, and so the map is one of those elements. And then we'll be adding the other things that are in the pipeline in terms of projects, at least as they're proposed right now.
Right, as they're proposed right now, and then we'll look at a couple of the other constraints that we discussed related to water resources.
Right.
And certain other things there. So we'll make that clear.
Yeah, so we'll also be, like I said, be bringing that water resource element chapter back, and we, like I said, just this morning had more conversation. So Wade, was there anything more you wanted to add based on those two pieces that we haven't maybe covered?
No, I think we're good with that right there.
Okay, so yeah, we had been touching base with Wade on that as well, so, okay. So, like I said, just to repeat myself a little bit, but reiterate, I guess mainly, which is, because we'll talk about the transportation chapter again. So we're going to be working with staff to incorporate this new information, the comments, the edits, and create new drafts for you to review. We haven't really talked about the mechanics of that yet, but
What my thought was, and Wade and I have talked about this a little bit, is we're going to take everything that's in the shared drive that you've already commented on, write clean drafts, okay, so that sort of incorporates, based on your discussions and your comments, what it is. Add information, so taking, Chuck stuff, other stuff for the introduction, things like that, and then produce new drafts, and then we'll reshare those, and they'll be named new and all of that stuff, so that you can see where we got it from, but you'll get whole new stuff to review and then comment on that way. That was the way that Wade and I had discussed it, so.
So we'll be working closely with staff,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you'll probably hear directly from them as we put this together. In addition to the meetings, like I said, we'll be talking through the main elements at the meetings moving forward.
Would it be too much to get some goals for 2 weeks from today to have sent out to us?
Yeah, so,
We set that, just so, I mean,
Yeah.
we might not be able to meet, but,
yeah,
and maybe people won't have much time, but that's okay. Right, we still need to do what we can to.
So I think the question there then, so I think one of the things that Wade and I were discussing was bringing back like the community facilities, or I think we changed the title of there slightly, but the public facilities chapter. Since we've done the most work on that chapter already in terms of edits that have been made, but we could also, go back to the introduction, we could pick out, if that's what you want next in terms of the new drafts, is like the introduction, we could do that. Or we could look at it sort of the way that we were thinking about it. So, it depends on what you want to bring back, but we can definitely have something for you in a couple of weeks to do. That I don't think is a problem. You okay with that, Wade?
No, I think we need to keep this ball rolling here, and exactly that, staff's gonna step in and make sure things are squared away, get them to you guys, get your comments, and then show them right back to you with the comments incorporated.
Yep. And for the stuff that is there, if you have additional comments, you can just put them in those documents directly in the drive, so if you have something else.
With the goal being,
Yeah, like the
sorry, Wade.
With the transportation one, I think that's a prime example of, any comments you have, Niles and I are gonna be working on this one. There's a lot of, input that needs to be placed in here and get that one squared away to make it, address several concerns that we have and have had that need to go into the plan.
Yeah, and especially just related to like future projects and things like that, there are things that we want to address and do that as well.
Can I ask a quick question on the transportation section? So one of the things, especially when we get to economic development, that I would like to touch on is the value and impact of the ferry to the area. And I noticed there's nothing in the current transportation section on that, and I'm wondering, my goal would be to have that topic, the ferry, have some tendrils that go through multiple chapters to try to give it some more gravitas, if you will. Is there any particular reason why? And historically, I can guess why. But.
Right. Part of it was when this was written, it was more focused on within town and sort of that kind of thing. But I think with the ferry, one, we can do the basis of what already Link has done and Fair Access has done, where they did a survey of how many trips it does and all of that stuff. So that's one of the things that I think we can include right away in this chapter, is say, another transportation impact is the ferry, blah, blah, blah. Right. So.
Okay, so the point I was making, just as again, more of a bigger picture one, is that we'll be revising these chapters with the input, with the goal then of having everything kind of to you in August, and then we can look at the whole thing again together to make sure all the pieces are fitting together. And then, so as you work through these, you have comments, changes, et cetera, we'll still have a couple more bites of the apple before we say it's finalized. So if there are some still things we need to add to it or change, modify, it'll be kind of an iterative process. But the goal, to kind of have this whole thing in a draft form by August with all of the additional changes.
So, looking at this transportation chapter, would it be most effective to just kind of go page by page and have a discussion on each of these little sections and anything that we have questions or comments about, and get like a set comment for you?
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine, yeah.
All right,
So we
let's
can
go
start
that way
there.
then.
Okay. Yeah. So this was one of the first chapters that was drafted, and it was actually drafted, I think, before I started. So we haven't spent much time with it since then. So getting more input is good, but we were planning to take that up again. So any other guidance that you have is helpful.
So I don't know if we want to just go, does anybody have anything on overview that they wanted to say? Or goals? Are we good to objectives?
So I would be happy to speak on objectives and actions.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, it feels incredibly redundant. I mean, there are like 6 items in just objectives that talk about the bus. And that feels unnecessary. And I'm not sure that in my mind I understand the difference between objectives and actions, because the first objective is to continue lobbying state, county to improve pedestrian bicycle safety, blah, blah, it goes on. But then under the 7th action item, it's continue lobbying the county and state officials to make needed transportation infrastructure improvements. Those sound like the same thing to me.
Right.
So I'm not sure that we need both a action and a objectives section, and that
Right.
regardless, there doesn't need to be 12 and 16, 28 items. That seems like a lot for a town our size.
So, yeah, I think we can go through and look at the redundancies and make broader sets of things, and that was one of the things that I noticed. At one point in an earlier draft that Larry had done, there were the goals, objective, and actions for each of the, so each goal had objectives and actions, so it was a set, and then when they did the draft, it ended up this way. So I wonder if it's also worth looking at the other way that they'd done it, and then removing stuff that was redundant that way as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was going to take on. Also, not only to make it more concise, but also to make sure that the format kind of matches across the chapters. So we have slightly different ways of addressing this across the plan. So you're right. It's number one, too wordy, and probably the material is redundant.
And as I looked through some of those objectives, like integrate walkability into the land use planning and development review process, we do that. We think about that every time with sidewalks. So I don't know that that needs to be a separate objective. Or when I go down to number 6, improve existing bus transit, we need to lobby for improved
Yeah.
existing bus transit. We don't have jurisdiction over that. There's a lot of these, like number 7, 8, I noted lobby for these. These are all things that need to be lobbied for instead of us doing it.
Yeah.
One other question, 10. What is a shared mobility opportunity? Expand shared mobility opportunities. Is that carpooling?
Right. Well, and I think we can move that around too. But, yeah, sorry, what?
Shared mobility opportunities? What is that?
As I understand it, that is sort of our streetscape is kind of an idea of that, where you have options for biking, walking, driving, all in the same area.
So maybe just implement the streetscape plan?
Right, and that's where, that
Okay.
is actually one of the actions, and of course, we're doing it already, so we might just want to address that differently in general, if you get what I'm saying? And so say, going back to kind of the idea of what have we already done, and then what are the follow-ups to that?
Right.
So I kind of assume, Niles, that you and Wade will kind of look through these objectives and actions and change some of those things
Yeah.
on your own, kind of,
Right.
those.
Exactly, yeah, so I think the feedback that I'm hearing, and I'll see if Wade agrees, we'll just go through and combine all of the things that we think are combinable, if that's a word, and then,
Well, I
and then go
think
from
there's
there.
actually things in there that don't really belong in there, and there's
Yeah.
certain things that aren't in there that need to be in there.
Right, exactly, and I think that's part of what I want to mention when I mentioned in my memo.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff,
Scale it down to our town size. I mean, some of these seem like they came from outside sources and stuff, and they probably did.
Yeah.
But it needs to be framed and brought down to our level.
yes, agreed.
Right. No, that's true.
So then are we okay kind of continuing on from that if town staff is going to handle that? All right. On page 3, that first sentence, the Maryland State Highway Administration is responsible for maintaining Maryland 107 and Maryland 109, and the town is responsible for the remaining 18 miles of the 21.5 total miles of roadway. I don't even know I'm confused.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what that means, but that sentence doesn't make sense to me.
And it's not quite,
Yeah, it needs to be adjusted a little bit too.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be adjusted because some of 107 we own, and so that number will be adjusted. But we can also say that, we could even just rewrite it to say simpler, that the Maryland State Highway Administration is responsible for primarily MD 107, 109. The rest of the roadway is under the control of the town, or something like that, and then we can spell out exactly how much, but not the whole thing, yeah, but,
also quantity.
Yes, so we can adjust what it says and how it says, but make it, again, more of a summary than the specifics of it.
Right. I think we did
It
actually go
should be
through.
also probably be noted that we did take over several county roads as well as state roads,
Yeah,
and include that into this calculation, because it's not correct.
right.
Right. I think what we did was actually had a little mapping exercise to update our layer so that we could
Yes,
actually
and-
calculate that, and that was done after we did the
Yeah.
draft, so I think we have the updated map now.
Mhm.
And I will say, I apologize, we do have the map that are inserts, so we'll send that over to Niles so you can see the draft maps as well. I thought we'd already sent those over, so I apologize for that.
All right, I'm just gonna keep going, sorry. All right, page 4.
Sure.
Anybody, are we okay to move on to page 4? Okay, page 4 towards the bottom, that last paragraph. Do we even do this? Street types? Is this something we even do in our town?
So this is something that like the state and the county do, and it helps define capacities of roads and things like that. For example, you know, the difference between, say, the volume on Fisher, which from a recent study is about 2,600 trips a day, is different than a residential street. So those divisions are supposed to reflect volume and how a road is used. So I'm not sure how much, my question is, I'm not sure how much of this is something that we need to reference in terms of state guidelines for transportation or something like that, versus just saying these, you know, we generally have residential streets with a few exceptions.
Right. I
This-
think we typically document them if we have the information, so.
This section was really weird to me in that it's like the state and county classify roads, but then there's only 2 classifications given. It's either local or it's collectors.
Yeah.
And then below it says progressive towns are adding street types. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we have the 2 types that they list here.
We actually, the town does have different ratings for different types of streets. The ones are tertiary
Yes.
and primary and so forth and so on.
That would be more meaningful, this. I guess
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at is this is not meaningful
Right.
within the context of our comprehensive plan. And I'm not sure how this needs to be rewritten. I assume that this is probably something that you guys.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. One thing I think we have to look at is how much do we want to talk about our road types? How much do we need to talk about road types? And then also, you know, if we do need to declare, like, what are the state roads or what are the county roads that intersect with the town? Which is, I know, something that I know is talked about in the county plan and things like that, is how different areas connect to different areas. And so that's partially where we might have to get into that. But we can sort of look at it in a slightly different way.
Okay, I'm still going then. All right. Looking at page 6, existing roadway elements, that last part of that sentence, that all of our town roadways comply except with the exception of Beale Street and Westerly. Is there a reason why? Can that be expanded upon a little bit?
Yeah.
Because that's a little bit,
Look at that.
it's just odd to just leave it like that.
Well, I mean, part of it, I'm sure, just looking at it, is that Beale Street, you know, doesn't have any sidewalks, doesn't have any curb and gutter and things like that. So that's what that sort of just means there, I think. Yeah, and it's a historic road, but we can add that to the next section too.
And is this,
Yeah,
are we
also-
calling this out because we have to address this?
Yeah, just as something else where it says rustic roads, none of the roads within the town boundaries are rural rustic.
Yeah.
Jerusalem is on the edge.
It's on the edge, it's not in the, Jerusalem's not, but as soon as it comes into town, it's no longer.
Yeah.
Would
But
the,
we might have to note just that those end at the town.
Town limits.
Yeah.
would the exception of Beale Street and part of Westerly not being ADA compliant be a goal to bring those up to fully accessible roadways?
would be ADA compliant.
Which part is not, which part?
We'll need to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. Just, why is it not compliant? Why are there exceptions and what do we have, you know?
Yeah.
Are they grandfathered in through some?
I think that,
Right.
I do think that that's actually the case. It has to do with when it was dedicated.
Right, so 1870, I don't think we had.
Didn't
Yeah,
have the
right.
ASHTO and,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, there's missing information
Yeah.
here. Like, I want to know why and what's different. And going to the bottom of that page, there's the whole part about the traffic volumes of roadway reflect and the level of service. And then it goes on to the back and it's even highlighted. Since Poolsville has no signalized intersections, there is no loss data within the town. Do we even need this section then? About this LOS data? Is that
So I-
even important?
I think that was something that when we talked about this in December, I think we had a similar question. I think part of it is that it might be something where normally, it might be just as short as having a comment that just says that last sentence. You don't need the rest of it, you just need to say that we don't have it.
Right, right.
I think the old master plan.
I don't know if it's even
Yeah.
important to say that.
Okay, yeah, I think, yeah, I agree, so.
Okay.
We'll look at that for sure.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead to page 9. I just had a question about, and I didn't have time to look up the streetscape plan, and I should know this, but toward the last the last sentence or two sentences from the end there in this bicycle facility says future projects within the town should plan for bicycle additions and improvements to create a connected and safer bike network. Is that part of our streetscape plan? Does it have bike lanes or anything that would make it more safe for bicyclists?
Yes,
Yeah, I think
It-
part of
it-
that might.
it does.
I think part of that might come from, in the past, there'd been a lot of discussion about trying to make not just the parts of the streetscape that are right here on Fisher, more bike-friendly and safer, but to try to expand them, particularly back to Wooton and some other areas. So I think that's where a little bit of that flavor comes from. It goes a little bit outside just what we think is the core streetscape section.
So it might be something where we say in this
That's
section.
that's a historical context. I don't know if we
Right.
still want to do that or not, but that's what some of that history was.
But I think
It
we,
is, you're right, Chuck, yep.
yeah, but I think it might be something where we might want to say, what we are doing in the context of bike facilities about the streetscape. So saying that one of the goals of the streetscape project is to blah, 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 blah. And then if you guys want to look at further bike improvements, we can also put that as part of this section and then refer back in the goals and objectives, so.
All right, and I'm going to skip ahead now. Can you believe it? I'm going to skip ahead a few pages to page 15. So this is where White's Ferry Operations Alternative Study is, but like you guys were kind of talking about, there's nothing current about it. There's nothing about, like, it just is lacking. It doesn't have enough information about what's happening now, what the push is, all of Fair Access's work. 2 headings down, 2040 Maryland Transportation Plan talks about Aberdeen.
Oh, yeah.
So that needs to be fixed. And I think that we talked about that before.
Probably.
And then the plan, or the section after about Montgomery County Bicycle Master Plan, it has no connection to Poolsville. It either needs to be connected or it needs, I don't know its purpose. And I had that same thought on pretty much every section after. Visualize 2045, Montgomery County Vision Zero Work Plan, and the Master Plan of Highway and Transit Ways. None of it talks about how it relates to Poolsville at all. It's just literally that these things exist and they're county initiatives, but county doesn't have jurisdiction. So I want to know why does that matter to our plan or us?
And part of it might be looking at, I know there are things particularly with some of the Vision Zero stuff and such that looks at roads that come into Poolsville, and so that might be the thing to look at there, and I can relook at that.
Niles, we got an email not that long ago with Montgomery Planning with regards to the pedestrian master plan.
Correct.
Can you speak, I know we're talking about bicycles, but it feels like this is kind of encompassed in that. Can you speak to what that letter actually meant? Because I've read it multiple times, and it really says a lot of nothing.
Yes, so the.
Welcome to Montgomery County.
Yeah, so the county is doing a whole big extensive initiative to address and identify streets where they want to make improvements to the roads to make them better for pedestrians. So some of it is very detailed. In fact, in Martin's Additions, where I used to work, they signified exactly where they would recommend putting in sidewalks in the village, even though they didn't have jurisdiction there. Like, we want to put sidewalks here, and then your road stops, and it doesn't, so we want you to connect it, things like that. So some of it is very detailed, and some of it is just big initiatives about adding road diets and things like that. So the general idea is to try to make the county more comprehensive when it comes to the plan. In fact, the whole plan, and I think the one thing about what we sent is that in that letter, you can click on the link and you can get to the whole plan. The whole plan has a lot of very detailed information. How much of it actually applies to Poolsville, going back to the same thing about the bike plan, we would want to call out those specific things if there are about connecting roads and things like that. But a lot of it, I mean, especially down county, it like categorizes every road in Bethesda and how they want to address pedestrian safety in one way or another.
I wonder if, as part of our comprehensive plan, we could look at that, cherry pick things that are relevant and integrate them into the plan in such a way that makes it more likely for them to give us money to implement these projects.
Yeah.
Like, that could be a part of our objective, is to pull directly from their document and say, hey, this is one of your goals and it's one of our goals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help us to finance this goal?
Yeah. There you go. Mhm.
I don't have anything new. Okay, good. Chuck?
Oh, just offline.
Really?
Can I request a 5-minute intermission
Yep.
this section?
Absolutely. All right, so those are our current comments on the section. We'll probably still bat around a little bit offline and come back and.
And we'll coordinate, again, we'll coordinate with Niles in particular on text edits and so on. So appreciate us going through this again. And again, I'm much more familiar with the town now than I was in December, so.
We're gonna
Appreciate
take
that.
a quick recess. All right, we'll reconvene, get started again. I just wanted to make sure we had one other potential topic for discussion with Wallace Montgomery before we let Michael go. I'm not saying we need to discuss this, but we did say something about following up on the redevelopment discussion. I think that can be ongoing. I don't know if we have anything specific now. Just want to make sure.
And we just have the Google Doc, so if you have stuff that you want to share, it's a lot of the summary of past comments are in that.
You got the link in there.
And you can take a look. I know Amanda did today, so I think it sent me an email. Yeah, it sent me an email. So if you need to look at it again.
Yep.
Is that not on the OneDrive? It's on a Google Doc?
It's on a Google Doc. It's in the memo that I gave you, that I sent you, is the link directly to it, so you can pull it from there. I'll send it to you again in the morning if you
Yeah,
need.
it's fine. I can pull it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. The Donegan property, townhouses. It's finally time. You guys have been very patient. I appreciate it.
Can you hold on just a minute?
No, we folks are probably back there.
We were killing time. I come here for my recreation on Wednesday night.
I don't see Tom, I'll put it up anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Niall,
You can pull up another chair if you need.
Martin just said
Oh, yeah. Yes, Martin?
yeah, Martin here. I can't, my screen is blank. I can't see any, documentation. I don't know if you can fix that
Yeah.
or not.
I'm gonna share it in just a second. They're getting set up, and I'll
Awesome.
share it in
Okay.
just 1 second.
Great, thank you.
And while we're rolling through this little transition, Martin asked me to make an announcement on his behalf that he did speak to the commissioners about us reviewing our processes, trying to streamline and be more efficient with our comprehensive plan work, and it was well received, and they appreciate it, so just passed on. All right, I'm gonna need each of you to state your name and the reason you're here.
Hi, my name is John
Yeah,
Cushrow.
you gotta put your microphone on, yeah. Thank you.
Can I stand here? Can you hear me?
Yep.
My name is John Petrella. I'm a real estate developer in Boyd's, Maryland. My company is Holly Ridge Development, and we are the contract purchasers of the Donegan property down by the CVS and the Tractor Supply.
Brian Afnan, partners with John.
Phil Hughes with Charles B. Johnson Associates.
Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So just as we did last time, start with John Strong.
That's it.
Okay, so we received some plans. You had seen the concept plans before, but the plans we received were May 25th and the 31st of May. This is for a 39 townhome, single-family lots based upon PCOM approved zoning. This is the first review of the preliminary plan and is recommended reviewing the requirements of Section 7 of the zoning code. That's the section that deals with the PCOM. Additional comments may arise during the hearing, and further review may impact on our comments. Based on our review, we do not recommend approval of the plan at the present time. The following: the preliminary plan, the current preliminary plan, no forest conservation or afforestation is physically shown on the plan. By policy, the town is not accepting fee in lieu. Therefore, forest conservation efforts must be shown on the plan, or a request for a waiver from the forest conservation requirements. If a waiver were to be requested by the developer, then the planning commission would need to make a recommendation, and then that recommendation would be taken to the State of Maryland Natural Resource Department. Forest conservation areas and stormwater discharge should not be considered for open spaces. They cannot be used for recreation or development of recreation facilities. Roadway sections. The roadway section, the town has a series of requirements for roadways. What is shown that abuts the road, the Wooten Avenue and Fisher Avenue are fine, but in back of that section that you see on the plan, that's a 20-foot right-of-way that's shown. And our minimum for the roadway itself is 26, for two-way traffic is 26 feet. And of course, this is a townhouse section. If the developer wishes to apply for an exception to the town standard, they should request this from the planning commission. Travelway in the rear will need its own street names. We discussed that within the town staff. The availability of naming of the roads would have to go before the Parks and Streets Board. Parking should provide 2.5 parking space, 2.5 parking areas for off-street parking per unit. Parking is rear load parking. Most likely, we believe that those units would have to have probably a garage in there to get that 2.5 number. Open space, this requirement is not addressed in the plan submitted. Storm drainage lines, if they run between two lots or between buildings, we would recommend to be centered. Sewer system is shown as a, sorry, wrong one. In here. All right. If the town maintains storm drain lines, we need 20 feet easement so that we can get in there to do work on them. If there's bioswales, of course, those would be need to be dedicated to the county. There's not enough detail to determine how the sewer system would function, but what appears to be a gravity system. So that'll need to be addressed. All water and sewer mains should be proposed in a right-of-way or on town-possessed property. If this is not practical, then an easement system would need to be established. Covenants and restrictions are not shown. Many times a townhouse section would have a HOA in place to take care of the grounds. Road naming, we talked about that. Montgomery County Schools and Fire Services would need comment on the plans. We'd need a letter for that. Adequate water sewer allocation needs to be addressed. We recommend public infrastructure agreement be in place before any preliminary plans are signed. It should be noted that the comprehensive plan is now being created and may impact the development. Stormwater concept review is underway with Montgomery County. Those are my comments. Any questions?
You guys probably just got this, right? You guys haven't had this very long, obviously.
Oh, we've had it long.
The June 5th? Oh, yeah, a couple
Yeah,
weeks.
that was a while ago.
Yeah, okay. And just discussion so far? No action on any of these items so far?
A couple of back and forth,
Yeah.
they're going to respond.
Yep, okay. Take it from there.
Would you like me to respond to each one? Or just, there's certain of them that have a impact on the layout in its entirety. Out of all of the conditions, I think that most of them we can sit down with John and hash them out. But there's actually probably, I think, 4 conditions that need to be reconciled, I guess, probably by this commission. So if you'd like, I just would address those. And then the other stuff we can deal with John after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to, yes. We can have that discussion right now, yes.
Okay. All right. So you guys remember this, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this
Well, sorry, Chuck, have you seen this before?
Yes.
But we do have a new member, so.
Okay. Hi.
I've been dealing with the Donovan property owner well for a couple of decades
Why does everybody say that? Everybody says that. I'm on my first decade dealing with Jay Donegan. He is.
He looked up all kinds of different options back there.
Okay, so since last I was here, the last time I came, I had negotiated for that little piece that was left out that's adjacent to the Tractor Supply. And that's not actually owned by Jay. It's owned by the guy who owns the Tractor Supply, Perry Cho. So Jay had some sort of agreement to purchase it. He made that agreement, so now we're going to purchase it. And there are some things in the preliminary plan that Niles that we dealt with in terms of the subdivision, code, so we could purchase the property. Anyway, so we came through and we laid out the plan, and we had, I guess, assumed, I think we made a series of bad assumptions. One was that we would get a fee in lieu of afforestation. I was surprised when that wasn't available, and that's one of the things I wanted to address right now, because the afforestation on this site changes the complexion of plants significantly. Can I walk over there?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to talk a lot about like the streetscape and, the front porches adjacent to the roadway, which, have you seen these pictures? Pretty cool, right?
They're not what I expected. They're not what I expected.
What did you expect?
I expected the porches to be walk-up. I thought they would be 4 to 5 street above street level.
Well, that's interesting because that's an issue that I'm going to address.
I really expected it to be a raised step up above street level to the first story.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
That could happen. I mean,
I was just surprised.
Ever since we started doing this, all I do is drive around and look at front porches. I do, and I get out of the car and my wife says, "Don't go up there." And I'm like, I mean, this is more old school, okay? And I mean, you see this driving through town. And my office is in a little park in Boyd's next to the country store, and we have that like ground level porch. And, every time we have a staff meeting, I'm looking at it, like measuring. It's like, so we're not dead set on this. I think it's interesting because it makes the front porch more user friendly. And I also go back and forth about railings. Where I live, I have a front porch that looks much like that. That's like 4 feet off the ground, and it has a railing. But the railing like kind of clutters up the front of the house. So I think that's open to debate. For the record, Brian Afnan is my partner, and he is going to build the houses with me. Brian was an NVR vice president for about 25 years, and 2 years ago he went out on his own, and now he's doing a lot of spec houses in Bethesda and Chevy Chase. So he's going to be, and this was his design. This picture would be standing at the circle and looking into the site. And this is what I described before, is I wanted to have some sort of like public space there, that was like associated with the development, but also relative to the circle. So I designed a pergola that's like concentric to the proposed traffic circle. And it ends up looking like this in the corner. And that's the space I wanted to have, where I want to have public site art.
That's right. You're right.
I'm sorry. Why don't you walk around the room? Anyway, so that's the area I was talking about before. I wanted to create that space that's kind of like, it's external to the site, so it's like used by everyone, but it's also, it kind of fits in. And what we're showing here too is we have like bioretention areas, and I'm working on DPS right now. If you look at this plan, excuse me, Brian, we show this, like this is a pretty fair-sized area here, but this pergola kind of goes over that bioretention area, because I just thought it would be kind of cool. I don't know if we'll get away with it or not, but I thought it would look neat. So this is where, you know, we want to, I know there's like a really like up and coming like arts community here, which I think is really neat. You know, I guess, was it Riverworks? That's super cool. And I'm hoping, what I wanted to do is, once this is built, like have a public site art competition and maybe have some, you know, jurors from the town, you know, have people submit stuff. And then we would donate money to actually have it installed. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all of these houses, this is pretty much the plan we had before. You know, everything faces the street, and then we have these internal units. And what we did is we created another driveway up here, so we're kind of turning our back to the Tractor Supply a little bit. And this is actually upgrade, maybe 8 feet or so. And I wanted to create a space here, you know, for the people that live back here. So we created this like open space kind of courtyard situation, because I thought that would be, you know, a pretty cool place, you know, to live on this green. And this is actually a pretty significant space. You know, it looks small on this plan, but I think this is, I don't know, 75 feet across. So this is a nice lawn area. And this is actually, there's actually a significant amount of trees here, which we would also beef up after the fact. So this is the plan that I want to build. When John mentioned that the afforestation, there's no fee in lieu, the only other thing to do is to basically reforest. There's 2 areas that would meet the requirements. One is this area up adjacent to the CVS, which is not illogical, but it's a strange place to reforest, but it meets the criteria. The only other area would be over here. I mean, it still has some consistency in this flow. So I had actually did another sketch just to give you a feel for what it would look like in this iteration. And basically what it does is the afforestation would be up here in the corner, and it, you know, I still managed to keep a nice green across here, which is okay, but I don't like it nearly as much as my original plan. And I don't know, to me, the afforestation requirement is, I don't know if that's meant for town centers, and we're looking at this like a, you know, more of a, like an urban area.
Redevelopment.
It's almost a redevelopment, but this you know, clump of trees here just seems like a strange place for it.
It's very disconnected from any other kind.
From anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's a viable, you know, forest stand eventually, but I'm not sure you want a stand of trees sitting there over time. I don't. That said, I would ask the commission, you know, to give me some direction in that regard. If you agree that the other plan is superior, I'd like to work with John and the state and try and figure out some solution. And I know that there's something in the ordinance that references a fee in lieu, but I talked to a friend of mine who does the environmental stuff for the state, and he said he thought there was also the potential that you could do afforestation somewhere else. Off-site. Somewhere else in Poolsville.
Yeah, the problem is that the afforestation would have to take place within the town limits. And at the present time, there's no afforestation bank or forestation bank within the town.
Well, I would suggest that we'd find the property and do it somewhere. I mean, actually plant the trees.
Right, but are you saying the town would dedicate it, or are you asking for town property to do that, or
I
are
mean,
you?
if there was town property where you wanted some forest, that would work for me. I mean,
That would have to come from the commissioners. That wouldn't come from.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, what I'd like to do is that's one of 4 issues. And I'd like to leave here with some idea of what the commission's thinking. You know, if the afforestation, you know, waiver is a non-starter, then tell me. And I'll go that this direction, which again, I think it's a peculiar place, you know, to have afforestation. The second issue we had was the open space requirement. And I think that was me just not understanding the process. You know, we had, put that one back. I mean, I think we have spaces that I would deem open space, but probably not as described in the ordinance. And I certainly didn't go through the process of meeting with the Parks Committee. That's a mistake. But, you know, we're going to build this public open space here, and I was planning on having open space here. And the idea of having a facility here, to me, didn't make any sense, because there's facilities that are walkable from this, you know, site. So I think the first time I was here, I mentioned, you know, I pictured my granddaughter coming over from the elementary school and having a juice box and then taking her skateboard over to the park. And I like the idea that this is kind of walkable to a lot of stuff. So I didn't really, we debated whether we wanted to put a tot lot or something in here, but it didn't fit what I was thinking. So, I still don't want to do like any sort of like playground facility. But I guess what I should be doing now is meeting with the Parks Department and kind of going over, you know, what they would want. Is that?
So, in the plan that he has, that open space that he has on that plan there, does that meet requirements, or is there an issue with that being counted as open space?
It may meet it as a passive park, but there's always also a fee in lieu that can be adjusted.
Right.
And I think it provides for the potential for a combination of all of the above.
That's
So,
correct.
You know, this area down here, I think this is gonna be pretty special. So to me, that satisfied some of the requirement, but, you know, if it was a straight up fee in lieu that you wanted, that would be fine.
I don't think so.
Can you clarify real quick, Wayne?
Hey, Niles,
Go ahead, Martin.
would it be possible to see the original plan on the screen?
Yeah, certainly. Just give me 1 second and I'll switch that for you. Okay?
Thank you very much.
This one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was your job.
Town's gonna carry it all the time.
My bad. Okay. I was trying to convert it to acres, but I said.
Acres 43,560 square feet.
Yeah, I know the math. My question is, how many acres is this platted lot? Sorry, how many acres is this?
Our entire parcel is 3.92 acres.
3.92
That
acres.
represents, I think it's 15%.
About 20.
I was gonna say it's more than that, yeah. It's,
About 25,000 feet.
Which is.
this,
The green stuff?
yeah, the green
shade.
stuff's 26,000, roughly.
Yeah. Between the two of
So
them.
I have,
Isn't that 15%?
yeah.
Which again, I think is a standard, I would notice
Sorry.
that everything else in the zone in that area does not have afforestation. Yeah, that's fine, but I mean, again, I'm looking at this as more of an urban environment, so the afforestation, you know, I don't think it works there. But that's just me.
In the plan, behind you right there.
Maybe.
So, Niles?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just comment, I'm having a hard time hearing the conversation, so, you know, I'm maybe not making an informed comment here totally, but my comment is that I feel like the original plan, I guess I would say it's a better plan. Like, it doesn't, the newest iteration seems like it's like really cramming a lot into a small area. The original plan I'm looking at on the screen now looks like it's like, it looks more like, there's more breathing room or something. I don't know.
So that's
Am I wrong there?
So that's the sketch plan. Sorry, I apologize, Martin. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to clue everything. What's on the screen now is the plan from September, the sketch plan that you provided there, just for the reference for you. Sorry, go ahead, Martin.
But I mean, that's the same.
It's the same.
Okay, that's the same. Okay.
But there was a version
previous
before that one.
Yes.
There have been several versions. The first
Right.
version didn't include this piece of property.
Right.
So that was certainly different.
Okay.
This is, the last one I walked in with was this plan, pretty close.
Okay. Let me just.
So the two issues, those are two of the issues, the open space and the afforestation. The other one is, John mentioned that the road section was not as per town code. And that's, again, probably I should have noted on the plan that these are private streets. I mean, these are basically alleys. And that's a pretty standard width that they use in most of the neo-traditional stuff. We developed a site called Cabin Branch, and some of the alleys in there were actually 18 feet. 20 is kind of a standard that we use. And when John mentioned before, I also think when he mentioned the parking, and this is worth noting, these are two-car garage townhouses, and there's a two-car driveway. These driveways are 18 feet deep, so in reality, each one of these units has 4 off-street parking spaces, and that's why the 20-foot width is like viable, because it keeps people from parking there. One of the other things that kind of segues into that is you'll notice that the radiuses and the turns are actually kind of out of scale with how things usually work. And that's because Brian and I have built a lot of these things, and we learned from our mistakes. When they first started doing these, they would have very small radiuses, and it would cause all sorts of issues with like big vehicles. So we put a bigger radius in there, it's much more user-friendly, and it also passes muster with the fire department. So the fire department has reviewed this plan and agreed to it, and that's why like there's actually quite a bit of space there. But it's our intention that these roads be private roads and be maintained by the homeowners association. And we would grant easements for all of the water and sewer and storm drain to the town of Poolesville in those roads. So I guess I'm asking that we be allowed to go with the 20-foot private road section. The last thing that I had that I think I need some guidance on is leads up to the comment that you were thinking that there would be some risers going into the porches. We're asking for a waiver from the actual height limit. You want to describe that?
Sure. So, if I may, I'll put this up so it's a little bit easier to see. Can you see that okay? Perfect. So the town of Poolesville has currently a height limit that is measured, I believe, to the ceiling of the top floor from the grade out front. And that height limit is about 30 feet.
It's exactly 30 feet.
30 feet. Okay. So these townhomes, they're townhomes, but they're not what townhomes were like 20, 30 years ago. Very small, very short. These townhomes are roughly 2,500 square feet, which is right down the middle of the alley of a typical resale home in the town of Poolesville today. Hunter's Run, a number of the older communities. So these are nearly single-family detached home size, but in a townhouse typology or form. And because of that, there's a couple of issues that are driving the need and necessity for more height. One is 9-foot ceilings. Back in the old days, we all remember 8-foot ceilings were pretty standard, pretty customary with construction. So we've got 9-foot ceilings on all levels. The other thing that is driving the height is modern construction materials. In order to ensure a really high-quality build, where the floors are solid, where there's no bounce, there's no deflection, we've got much deeper floor joists on this type of construction we're proposing than what was very common, say, 20 or 30 years ago. Our floor joists in this house are 14 inches deep, not 9 inches deep, which is what an old 2x10 was. So we've got much more substantial, rigid structure. It's very efficient. It's a little bit more environmentally sensitive because it's engineered building products. So it's a much more efficient use of wood material. So you've got design features with 9-foot ceilings. You've got increased floor thickness and rigidity and strength. And what ends up happening is the actual unit from the slab to the ceiling, just the unit itself, not sited on the property with any sort of fall, the unit itself is already just a tad over 30 feet. By the time you step down 6 inches from the entry door to the porch, and then another step or 2 or 3, depending on the grade, this is a very flat portion of the site, right at the corner. The grade actually picks up along Wooten as you go back towards Tractor Supply. The ground rises, so we've got significantly more grade. We wanted to give you a realistic view of what this would actually look like if you were walking around the circle. So without accounting for any grade, which is where the measurement starts out front, we're already just a hair over 30 feet. And our thought when it comes to height is that we want to build a really desirable design that has current features that home buyers are looking for, that residents are looking for. And to do that, we need to go a little bit taller. And then if you combine those features with the contemporary construction techniques, the 30-foot height limit is just too restrictive.
So what do you want, Brian?
So the grades vary across the site. I'm going to just toggle here. Right here, these units will be pretty flat, and that's what you picked up in the rendering. But as you move back up around here, and especially these units where the back is real high by Tractor Supply and the grade comes down behind the CVS, there's actually 5 or 6 steps there. So when you add up all those steps and you do all the math, we think as the town defines the measurement from the grade out front to the ceiling on the top level, we actually think we're going to be somewhere typically in the 35-foot plus range as it's measured under the code. So
we're asking for 36 feet, that's what we'd like to have, and that's what's shown on the plan. And I think I recall, we were talking about it before, I think the piece across the street, I think Dan Ryan actually got a waiver to go to like 35 or something.
It's 33 feet. We checked that today.
Yeah. And let me ask this question. The flat ones that are adjacent to the main drag, they don't have to be flat.
we're trying to keep it down.
But they don't have to be.
I'm not sure that, anyway, we have.
Just very specific, it's interesting you're bringing up the height thing, because that's what I consider our archaic height restrictions have been a thorn in our side for a long time. And, Wade and I chatted about this a couple of weeks back, for a completely different reason. One of, back to the comp plan draft for the municipal growth, when I listed out very, very specific things that we have to look at, one of them is essentially to take a hard look at the town code and those old height requirements, because they're going to be incredibly restrictive, I think, on a lot of potential new infill and redevelopment, because they are so kind of old.
Yeah, and I appreciate the comment. The other thing that John mentioned was the railings on his porch, on his home in Boyd's. So we talked a lot about that, and if you're actually sitting on your porch, and these are big enough to sit, they're deep, they're not decorative porches, they're functional, it just obstructs everything. And one of the real benefits of porches from a planning perspective is that they activate the street, right? They draw folks out of their home. You're sitting on your porch, John's sitting there with a juice box waiting for Lily to come home from school. And if you've got that railing there, it just clutters the view and it makes for a less enjoyable sitting experience. That being said, I think code requires a railing if you've got more than 3 steps or 30 inches of fall. So it is possible that we could introduce very subtly across a building some graduated grades to give a little bit of visual interest, to give a little bit of vertical separation. That's absolutely something that is doable. We're not quite at that engineering stage to be able to do that with any real specificity. So we wanted to show this because we do believe that minimizing the railings which obstruct the view of the homeowners who will be sitting on their porch is probably a good thing. It's also a really clean look, and
But you could bump that, how much without putting a railing?
from what you see there, we could bump that porch probably about 18 inches and give it just a little bit of lift. It's really three steps is where you trigger the rail.
Now I'm looking at it differently. I want it bumped up a little. I vacillate.
Yeah, but again, in this plan, the units that are up near the Tractor Supply as drawn have, I think, 4 or 5 risers,
Yeah.
potentially, because of the drop in the topography. So the one thing we can't control is the constraint on the perimeter, right? Tractor Supply is where it is, Fisher and Wooten are where they are, so we need to be sensitive to that and engineer a site that's got proper drainage, appropriate slopes, and is thoughtfully done. So having some variation in the height, even if some of the units are fairly level, is going to be a necessity because of the topographic conditions.
And those, up near Tractor Supply would have to have railings then,
If they're high enough, they will.
right? I mean, you're saying 4 or 5 risers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll have to have, it depends how we handle it. We may have a lot of risers, which would trigger a handrail, but if we can modify the grade and pull the grade up within the first 3 feet, we might be able to eliminate those handrails that are horizontal in front of the units. Again, it's more of a fine engineering question that we can more definitively drive out as the site is actually fully engineered.
But it's something that we can control to a large degree.
And that's really just those those 4 or 5 that have the garages.
I can see
right
that.
back up against the parking lot. Those are just,
You'll
just
see it
those.
here too.
The biggest
Oh,
drop.
those as well?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
This is the building that sits the highest.
Yep.
These units here could quite easily fall within the 33 feet that Niles was talking about across the street. That's not really the issue. That site across the street is really flat. And we're really flat down here, but we really jump up over here. And in the interest of being fully transparent, we want to make sure that we're covered across the entire site, which is why that number is higher. We think that this building and part of this building are the ones that will have the most elevation because we're trying to work our way up to the grade at the Tractor Supply property.
My first 2 thoughts on exceeding 30 feet are that I would be hesitant to go really high right on the road. And it's good, right, because those are flat. So we might have, if it's possible, some exceptions for height in certain in one section and not as high in another. And that it doesn't matter to me if there's railings on some and not others. If it needs to be somewhere, that's fine. I think I'd like it better without it being stepped up. It seems so welcoming.
It is, but I mean, it actually looks good either way.
Yeah.
I mean, it just does.
But I wouldn't let either that issue, 18 inches or flat, wouldn't hold up my opinion of it. I think that's, believe it or not, an improvement over what we, with the railings and such on the front.
So those were the issues that I think that we'd like some direction, if we could get it, near term before we come back. All the other issues, like with the parking and the water and sewer, I'm sure we can sit down and work that out. So can this group give us some direction tonight?
Well, I want to ask John a question. A4 station is something that we could only recommend, and you would take that to the...
So what would happen is the planning commission would make a recommendation for a forestation. And Wade, I don't think the commissioners weigh in on this. I don't think they do. But then it would go to the state Department of Natural Resources to ask for the waiver from the forest conservation requirements.
And if the commission saw fit that, to request the waiver, then my consultant who does all the wetland stuff and the tree stuff in the county with WSSI, he said he could go to the state relatively quickly and see what they were thinking, to see if that's something that they could deal with. But I don't really understand the relationship between the state and, the town in terms of, I think there's,
The state is the oversight board for forest conservation
Right.
requirements, and therefore the town has the ability to do forest conservation and designate the easements and locations for forest conservation. So we typically get involved in forest conservation areas, and the state comes by and reviews and makes sure we're in compliance with all the regulations.
do you think you could find an area in Poolsville where you wanted me to plant a bunch of trees? I have some ideas.
That is not for me to decide.
I'm sorry, I just happened to be looking at you.
I
I
think
meant to look at everyone.
I mean, the location certainly wouldn't be up for us to decide, right? That's a commissioner thing. But
Yeah.
we could decide whether or not we'd be willing to entertain that.
That's what
I'm asking you guys, is that something?
Wade, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Go ahead and say that again, the sound's breaking up pretty bad.
Sorry,
Okay.
so do we have the ability to at least consider whether we would be should we be thinking about considering afforestation in an off-site location? Or is that just something that we don't do?
We have done afforestation on off-site locations. I don't know that we have availability right now. We've done it in, around some ponds and other areas that we had areas available that were owned by the town.
So that's one of the things with afforestation. I've done a lot of it. Actually, at my house, I did afforestation, I guess it was 15 years ago now. And now the trees are gigantic and it's really cool.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, if you're gonna do a small area of it, it's best to do it adjacent to like an existing woodland. To have it like sitting
Right.
out like in a area like that, it's like.
Less useful.
Less useful and even detrimental in some regards, so.
I would like to bring up something, and maybe it's because I have a different perspective than most of the people sitting in this room except for Amanda, and that is, as a woman, walking around in the evenings or at night, if I am in a city area, I do not want to walk by a half an acre of wooded areas.
See,
I do not want to walk home. It is a safety concern for me. Like, I don't walk through Stevens Park. We close our parks at dusk, and that we close them for a reason. I mean, not that there's rampant issues here in Poolsville, but there is a reason you don't walk in wooded areas or by wooded areas. And if these are going to be 39 people, 39 homes, you would have to go by that to go to CVS or to go to, Cugini's or whatever. And as just a safety issue, and again, maybe it's because I am a woman that this is first thing that pops in my head, I feel like I would be very much considering towards allowing a waiver because of the safety aspect there.
On a related Tommy, now you ringing a bell. So when you think back to when the dog park and the skate park and the parkland were first put in, and we left that relatively dense set of trees behind the Subway Shopping Center and the park, that turned into just a haven for issues with youth. And we eventually took out an awful lot of those trees to solve that problem.
These are all things I wasn't going to say.
No, that's fine, and that's what we're here for. And we'd be potentially creating a similar problem, and now,
It is
right
really
in
concerning.
the core there.
Right across from the elementary school.
I definitely agree with you with the forestation, maybe looking for like an off-site type thing would be great if that exists, but I do want to see more open space though. That's one thing, like I think having that open space towards the back that you're thinking of as maybe, I forget what you called it, like a
Passive park.
passive park would be great. I do think that, you know, you could put some more trees around some of that though, to block a little bit of the CVS parking lot. Like you have trees along the one side to kind of block the Tractor Supply lot, but CVS is kind of open.
Yeah, if you go out here and hang around like I did, CVS is actually considerably off grade. And the trees that are here are pretty thick. We didn't show it on this plan, but we would certainly want to buffer this much heavier. We have every interest in making sure that the view shed is correct. We need to sell the houses. So maybe it wasn't shown as well here, but that certainly would be our intention. We do have to stay out of the stormwater management easement. This is actually the stormwater management for the CVS, which happens to be on our property, but they have an easement for it. But it's actually, ride by there and look. I mean, it's not bad looking, and that's what Tom and I were talking about earlier. The CVS architecture proper is actually kind of neat looking if you look at it. But we have every interest in like talking about that.
The other thing is I was kind of looking a little bit between that first original plan you came with and back a long time, almost a year ago. Over a year ago.
This is from
a
April
year
of
ago.
2022 is the original
Wow.
plan.
When I'm looking at that, that original front corner by the circle was going to be a much larger area that was going to be like a park area.
That was the triangle.
Yes, I remember a lot of discussion about the triangle. I like the pergola much better, but even the fact that there was more space before the houses started on the part facing Fisher and kind of extended a little bit more of that green space and that park-like feel. I like that because that's so
This is not an insignificant space though. I mean, this is actually a pretty fair sized area. I mean, we talked about like, the scale of what this should be, and you don't want it so big. I mean, we're always measuring stuff. I go outside, measure stuff and walk around it. And this felt good. I think the picture that we have, is actually, this was done based on, CAD drawings of the site. So you can see, this space is not insignificant. I didn't want it to be too big.
Hey, John, can we talk about the vision so there's a vision statement, like a summary of what the town is looking for, right? Particularly in the PCOM zone. And one of the things that we discovered after we drew that triangle plan that had the units set way far back was that the streetscape was gonna suffer, and it was inconsistent with the vision in the PCOM zone, which is all about activation and bringing sort of the energy and the life of the building closer to the streetscape. And actually Phil and his team at CPJ said, hey, okay, that we get the triangle thing, it's really kind of an innovative, neat space, but they didn't think it was gonna be consistent with that plan. So what John was talking about on the corner here with the pergola in this public site art and open space was a way that we felt we could introduce that element of like a civic space, a public access space, but still meet the spirit and the intent of what we understood the vision to be in the PCOM zone in the middle of town. So it's gone through a bit of an evolution over time, and where we've arrived, as John said, we think is a really good balance point between meeting the objectives of the sort of in-town PCOM zone, but also giving visual interest. And this corner is very significantly improved with hardscape and the pergola. It's very much meant to be an engaged space, very active, because it's really, I would argue it's going to end up becoming part of the gateway to the town, right, as you come in off 107. So
That plan also recognizes that eventually that circle will be there. So we're designed based on that circle. John sent us some design drawings, and that's what's shown on that plan.
And I think I appreciate all of the thought you guys have put into looking through our comp plan and making sure that you're kind of going with the vision of Poolsville. Obviously, you have a vested interest with family in town. I still wish that there was a little bit more green space there. I wish that it kind of mirrored Catty Corner where we have our pollinator garden and had some flowers or something to like make it almost match that and lose like a home, so that way we could have like a decent, like move a home back or lose a home. I may have said lose, something like that, but just to give more green space there, it would be really nice to have like that mirrored.
Okay, we'll research that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Did you say move?
I'll just echo what Amanda said. I agree with everything Amanda said, and I'll reiterate what I said earlier. The most recent iteration to me feels a little bit cramped. It feels a little bit, like you're trying to get as many homes as you can into a small space, to me, to my eye. And, like, as a planning commissioner, we're the ones that have to live with the aftermath of this. Like, if it gets built and people in town are like, there's too many homes, and, we're the ones that, like, get looked at, and, the blowback comes down on us. So I think it's, I like the original iteration. I know that that's not going to work with streetscape and everything like that, but I wish that there was like some kind of a hybrid you could do that was a little less crowded. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
And I know we had talked about the 20-foot road, width of the roadways there, and you wanted to be alleyways. Talking with the clerk, for Fisher Avenue houses that line up there, we only have 8 addresses available. So we got to figure that out. And if not, then it has to be a roadway behind the homes there, which then it's going to have to be, it can't be a modified, needs to be the 26 feet or have a variance. We're going to figure that one out. We did look at when Willard was next door, and they had some very narrow roads, and we had several people come in and testify and bring pictures regarding the road width. So we went ahead and we developed this road modified that John showed at 26 feet for that exact purpose, to allow the narrower road, not down to 20, because we know that even in areas we have 20 foot now, it is problematic. Trash days, parking, whatever it is, there's always an issue. We hear complaints continuously. So just something for the record there.
Okay.
And just the other thing to mention from a process point of view is that on the height, going back to the height for a second, that is something that would require a variance, and so it would have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals as well. So.
Can you take?
Yeah, and I don't see the height as a problem. It seems like it's very relative to what's across the street that was approved, and with the height of the CVS and everything up on the hill, I think it's a non-issue as far as perspective goes. As looking at that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the process. That was all I was saying. Yeah.
Yep.
I know we talked about it multiple times. Can you give me again one more time the definition of how the height is determined? John, please.
Okay, it's to the highest living space ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, down to the grade in front of the house. It's if you were to come right off the front of the house and go straight down until you hit soil, ground.
Okay.
That distance is set at 30 feet currently.
My question is, we're talking, like, if we were talking about the ones on the back,
Right.
I would say that the front of the house would actually be that which attaches to the street, which is most close to the street. So why would that not be like a step? I guess I'm thinking of it as like a walkout basement or like a.
Right. So are you parking, it's a rear loaded?
True.
Rear loaded, right?
Mhm.
That's what they call that, okay? That's not your front door, that's your back door, okay? So it's measured.
From the front door.
From
whatever is defined to be the front door.
Because the garage has to be the same level as the floor.
Right.
So there's no grade there. So the issue arises as you go around the building to the front. Everything here has to be flat for the driveway, where because you're driving into the house.
The grade seems really weird that it's not from slab to ceiling.
I didn't make the code.
I understand, but
Fullsville is the only
But,
jurisdiction.
but like for those rear loading properties, they get an extra, 3 or 4 feet, but they're still slab to ceiling the same as the ones in front. It's just, okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around who wrote this.
I have no idea. They used to call these something similar called an English basement.
Yeah. Yep. Which were cool.
Yeah.
So, I guess I would go back to my comments again. We'd like to move on with this. I think, we came in with, John surfaced a lot of questions. So while we're here, I'd just like some direction, which way this group, commission would lean. I'm not asking for absolutes. I just wanted to understand, would this commission recommend a waiver for the afforestation? And having said that, in the intervening month before I plan on coming back, I might find out you can't do it.
Right.
So I might come back in here with a plan where this goes away and this becomes afforestation. I'm sorry, I will fight not to do that because I have the same concerns you do. And I think if the town is behind it, I think we get that done at the state.
Would anybody have any opposition to working with a waiver or offsite, like just not having afforestation on site?
I'm good with the concept.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Legalities might get in the way.
Yep,
I'm good with the
yeah,
concept.
but, yep, conceptually we're cool with that.
I mean, we'll pursue it immediately and, work with John and get to the state and see what
Martin,
what.
just wanted to ask
Yes.
Martin, did you hear the question, that I posed to the other commissioners, if we would be okay with, supporting afforestation not on site? Or fee in lieu or something, not doing afforestation on the site.
Sorry, can't do fee and lieu.
I didn't really hear the question. It's hard to hear. I don't have a huge problem with that, but I'll go back to my original point about, like it looking crowded, so, yeah.
Okay.
So that's something you would consider? Okay. The second comment was the open space, and I think there's a requirement of 10% open space, which, again, seems like it was written more for large lot development. Just reading like the letter of the ordinance, didn't really refer to something, more downtown like this. So I think my next step there is to meet with the Parks Commission and see if we can, discuss getting credit for this or paying a fee in lieu. And I think the fee in lieu was, or a combination of the above. But I like this plan, and I think the open space that we have doesn't reach the level of 10%. It might be 5%. So I think it's incumbent on me to work with the parks people and try and come up with an agreement. But I wanted to make sure that, you know, this group doesn't think that there should be something else there.
I'm gonna just say again, I don't necessarily think there should be something else, but I would like to see that front corner expanded for more open space. So I'm just gonna throw that out as a personal feeling on it. I would love it to mirror that pollinator garden. I think that would be a really
Where
cool.
is this pollinator garden?
Directly catty corner.
Directly catty corner.
Yeah.
Directly catty corner.
Directly across the street, there's a pollinator garden with bike paths that go through.
So it's like full of bees and stuff?
Butterflies too, yeah. It's a nice,
I'm playing dumb. I have a pollinator garden at my house.
yeah, but it's a nice area.
Okay, we're gonna work on that. Move some units, maybe. Okay, the other thing was with the private roads, putting 26 feet of paving there, you know, makes the site even more constrained. And like I said, we build these, I've probably developed 1,000 townhouse lots in the last 5 years in 3 different jurisdictions. 20 feet is the standard. Again, because it's a private street, because, you know, one of the things, again, the citizens always complain about is that these alleys get tight, but because of the fire access and because we deal with this issue a lot, I've actually gone back in the subdivisions that we've done, okay, after the fact, and redone the radiuses to make them bigger, so that trucks and, you know, traffic come in here and they don't run all over the lawn, because that drives me nuts. So this is designed very user-friendly, but, I mean, I'd like to know that, I mean, maybe there's a middle ground in terms of, you know, what Wade and John and Niles think would be doable, apart from going 26 feet. 26 feet is going to create a situation where people are going to feel like they can park on it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up, to expand on John's point, that somebody brought up trash trucks and things of that nature. This was designed for fire truck movement. So trash trucks getting in and out of the alleys and maneuvering through this would not be an issue.
John, I'm going to make a suggestion because I can tell where this is going to be an issue. Can you supply us with some of the subdivisions that you have done with the 20-foot alleyways?
Sure.
Okay.
John, I got a question, because I was showing Chuck that if you pull satellite images of both the new development across the street and the Kohlhaas development, those interior roadways are only 20 feet.
Correct.
So when did it change? I guess, is it because those are HOA owned, or is it because?
Part of it was a HOA and part of it was the Willard property.
The Willard property, okay.
Willard property is all.
Single-family
Single
homes.
family. Single
Those
family.
are not
Single
detached or
families, and there was some of it
semi-detached.
was one
When
way.
they
and things
first
like
started, like the
Right, there's a difference
neo-traditional
between attached
stuff,
housing.
you know, with the alleys, when, I guess Andres Dwani came up and started designing Kentlands, which was one of the first ones in this area, they had actually 18-foot wide alleys. And I was involved in that a little bit, and it's kind of evolved. You know, 18 feet was a standard, but like I said, we develop a lot of it, so we do it to be user-friendly. But if you create too much pavement here, then people start using it.
Yeah.
Okay? The fact that you have 2 off-street parking spaces in the driveway is a positive thing, but if there's too much room, people use it. This functions. I mean, if you go through the fire access people, Marie LeBaugh, and she approves your plan, that means something, doesn't it, John? It does. That's not easy. So,
And she has approved this, you're saying?
she gave us guidance on this. We didn't get the letter yet, but she will. This was based on her design. I mean, she has specific distances from, you know, street intersections. For some reason, she thinks fire trucks can't back up. I see them back up all the time, but she won't go there, so you have to have turnarounds. She's tough. So this plan was designed, sent to her, and modified based on her comments. And I don't think she liked afforestation either. I didn't ask her that. I don't think so. So I think that maybe I'm gonna sense some flexibility here in terms of the roadway, and John, you and I and Wade can work that out. I mean, maybe 22 feet is what you need. Let's talk about that. And I'm assuming this commission, would respect what Wade and John came back with.
Yep.
Okay, and then the height limit. I think we wanted 30.
I think we can work with that.
Yeah, we can work with that.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, we're gonna have to work with that eventually, because it's, Tom, you said it. How many times have you gotten bit by this?
No, when I first read this ordinance 30 years ago, it's probably a 60-year-old ordinance. I've built 4,000 houses. Poolsville was the only place that they measure from the second story of the. When I read it, I'm like, where did this come from? And nobody knows, because it was probably 1940.
Well,
Ordinance for small people.
before this hearing, we had actually,
Well, short people, okay. I'm short.
Well, so, I was thinking about ceiling heights, ceiling heights were very popular, being what, 8 feet, 7 feet? It was an energy issue in the 80s, and ceiling.
anyway, what I was going to say before Tom
Sorry.
hijacked my time, is we have already filled out an application for a waiver, and done all the legwork. So I think we would probably file for that near term, because it takes a while. So we'll send that to Niles.
Yep.
And get that situation going.
I have one more question.
So I think what they need, for the waiver, they need a recommendation from this board to approve I got a sense, right? But you haven't done.
We're showing 36 feet. That's what we want. That gives us the flexibility to, meet the grade if we need to.
But you're not saying we need a recommendation to approve tonight. When the waiver comes to us, that's when we approve?
So Wade, that's a question that I wanted to
Yeah.
check. So can the planning commission now give a recommendation on a variance that has not yet been applied for?
Yes, they can.
Okay, then yes, if you would like to proceed with that, you can do that now.
Just my one concern is I do want to have some control about where those 36 feet go. Like, maybe not on the street front, like I said. So is there a provision for that? Is there a way we can?
Not unless you have a
Once we-
formal plan,
right.
because you're not gonna know the elevation till they grade out the site. And even then,
Sorry.
it may shift a little.
They've heard our comments, so I'm sure they'll do it in good faith.
One suggestion maybe to consider is, since 33 feet was utilized across the street some time ago, I think it would be quite reasonable, and we would certainly be amenable to say that the varying height would be capped at 33 along Fisher
Yeah.
for compatibility, with a logical transition up to a maximum of 36
Seems
on
reasonable. That seems
the
reasonable.
other side of the site.
Are you gonna write this down? I'm not
Well,
gonna remember.
we'll figure it out.
You could measure from,
Is anybody writing it down?
maybe go from slab.
What he said.
I mean, that would be really simple, but I think
So that's my only concern about, anybody making a motion or putting it, you can do whatever you want, right? You can make that motion if you want, but my concern about, approving something is that, just to get the language, and so I know we're all on the same page, but it'd be good to get it square. So I guess you can move forward knowing that our intention, and then when the variance comes to us, and we know, we see it spelled out the way we want it spelled out, then we can make a recommendation at that point.
Okay.
why don't we take a crack at drafting it?
Yeah.
For review.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things would be, because I heard some comments about the flush porches along, the front along Fisher, and if, that was amenable, or if you did want to see some steps there, because that could directly affect, how that height is interpreted.
I mean, this looks nothing like what I envisioned in my head. But I don't have any problems with it. I do have a question, however, against your 10-foot by 81-foot breezeways between you have several breezeways. Along the front, there is between your two properties, it's 10 feet. Properties are 81 feet long. Is green?
This?
Yes. All right, so there's several of those. And I'm trying to envision what you all see for those. Are those going to be covered? Are they going to be open? Are they going to be paved? Are they going to be grass? And if they're grass, how are you going to deal with the inevitable desire paths that are going to happen? Because that looks like a desire path waiting to be. Absolutely. And that's going to be a muddy mess. A desire path is where people take shortcuts and they inevitably wear down the ground and create their own path off the sidewalk.
Well, that's when men of a certain age sitting on the porch tell the kids to get off their damn lawn.
But it's still a natural cut through, right? So you
Yes.
end up with.
We can deal with that.
I'm just curious how you're going to deal with that not being a mud pit in a year.
Is that somebody's side yard or is that?
Yeah, so these are actually quite common. So we typically on an end unit will extend 5 feet. So that you can physically get around the building. We don't see these often becoming desire paths. Because we're very careful about.
What did you just, desire path?
Whatever it's called.
Phil, write that down.
I've never heard that before. So we're trying to be very sensitive to connectivity, right? We want good pedestrian circulation. So if we provide access points that are logical, we think that will mitigate any desire to sort of cut through.
Okay.
If we find that that's a persisting concern, then we can try to discourage that with strategic
Planting.
plantings.
You could fix it with planting.
We could, but we want to also be cognizant of very, very good conscientious maintenance. One of the things that we see in platted lot townhome communities, especially older ones, is that sometimes they're not kept very well. So even though we're platting lots, our intention with HOA ownership of private streets and individual lots is still to record a blanket easement over the whole site because we want it to be professionally maintained and we don't want anything sort of running down. And so these areas between the buildings become important for the grounds crew to get around and mow and weed whack and do all
So
the
it's
things.
all,
that they
this
do.
is 100% like lawn maintenance by professionals. But I understand that concern, and I think we can look into that and see what we can do, you know, in a detail to.
Absolutely.
To assuage your desire. What?
Everyone's stuck on that.
Well, yeah.
It's a real term.
Makes sense.
Okay. So, I'm cool. I think so. The last thing is, while we were sitting there for, I guess, 4 or 5 hours, listening to you talk about the comprehensive plan, I just couldn't help but think I'm listening to my project go down the tubes. Are we cool? I mean, you're gonna stick a comprehensive plan on me in a minute? Or- right?
I don't know what you opinion, honestly.
I'm just listening to everybody say no growth, no growth, no growth.
Oh, no, you're already factored in.
You're already.
So I repeat, I repeat, am I cool? I'm cool. Okay, all right. Oh, John put that in one of his notes,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the
too.
only thing would be water, right?
Yeah, your head is, yeah, if I were you, that'd be my biggest concern, and tell everybody's hands right now.
What?
Water.
Believe me, we pay attention.
Areas that allocation.
We have the allocation, but there's still issues, and, I mean, frankly, seeing the way you guys reacted to that is just phenomenal.
Good stat, huh?
Yeah. All right, we're done? So you're all still into it, right? I have to ask that every time. You're into
One
it?
last question, I'm gonna try to ask earlier, I was got keep coming with it. That little triangle up towards, right behind, I know that drops off, the grade's pretty steep there, but what else is the intent to that? I couldn't quite tell. It's
Nothing.
Just green, just grass.
Yeah, you know, if you ride by that right now,
I know.
it looks like a forest, you know, it's.
Steep enough.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes poorly, that's gonna end up being afforestation.
Okay.
But as it exists today, it's a pretty nice buffer.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
And something else I didn't miss.
Okay? Thank you all.
John will be out this weekend measuring stuff. So you guys are bored.
That's tape measure.
I expect you'll be in the pollinator garden, catty corner, walking around
carpenter bees, because my daughter-in-law said they were pollinators. So now I stand there and watch them eat my house, because I don't want to kill them. How's that?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded, or thirded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
You good, Wade, or is there anything else you want to say before we head out?
I'm out of here.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Wade.
I'm not sure. She's working on insurance, yeah.